Philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Tonight, Ontario renders its verdict on 4 years of Doug Ford's PC government as it steered the province through some truly unprecedented times. Will voters reward that stewardship or chart a new course? It's Thursday, June 2nd. We've got gavel-to-gavel coverage of election night in Ontario, and that starts right now on the agenda. Hi, everybody. We're delighted to have you with us for this special broadcast on Ontario's 43rd General Election Night. We're going to set things up for you during our regular 8 to 9 p.m. time slot for the agenda. And then at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, after the polls close, keep it here, because we really will have the most comprehensive coverage and analysis available tonight. From Aaron Kelly, from our panel of experienced politicians, from experts on housing, healthcare, and affordability, and from our in-house team of on-poly watchers. And a reminder, you can stay tuned to us even if you're on the move, on our live stream on tvo.org or on the Agenda's Twitter and Facebook pages, and chime in on social media while you're there. Meantime, let us put Election 43 into context. Each election is different, although there are patterns that emerge throughout history. So let's go through the four major party leaders and see what's what. Up first, Doug Ford, leader of the PC party and Ontario's 26th premier. His new government got elected 4 years ago, pledging to bring radical, disruptive, populist change to Ontario, and that approach promptly put his polling numbers in the dumper. But the pandemic gave Ford a chance to change the channel, and he did. Historically, Ford also has this going for him. No elected Conservative or Liberal premier whose party is in its first term in office has ever been denied a second term. Let me say that again. No elected Conservative or Liberal premier whose party is in its first term in office has ever been denied a second term. If Ford wins tonight, he'll continue an historic trend that's lasted since Confederation. Second, Andrea Horwath, Ontario's NDP leader. Horwath was the official opposition leader in the last House. She is a real anomaly in politics these days, in as much as this is her fourth election as leader. As we've seen with the federal Conservatives, oftentimes you can get the boot after just one loss. Horwath is hoping history repeats from more than 3 decades ago, when the NDP went from third place in 1985 to official opposition in 1987 to government in 1990. Third, Stephen Del Duca and the Ontario Liberals. 4 years ago, the Liberals received their worst drubbing ever, 7 seats. It was an historic collapse. Their new leader, Stephen Del Duca, won the party leadership in March of 2020, just in time to have a global pandemic force him to rebuild his party's finances, find candidates, and create a policy platform process from his living room on Zoom. But Del Duca has brought the Liberals back somewhat. Their polling numbers are better than last time. We'll see whether the rookie leader can return the Liberals at least to official opposition status, and whether he can win back his seat, which he lost 4 years ago. Of all the leaders, Del Duca's personal victory in Vaughan Woodbridge is the most tenuous. Fourth up, Mike Schreiner, leader of the Ontario Greens. 4 years ago, he enjoyed the big breakthrough, the first one Ontario seat by a party other than the Tories, Liberals, and New Democrats in 7 decades. Schreiner took Guelph by a big margin. Now he's looking for that second breakthrough seat and thinks it could be in Parry Sound, Muskoka, where there is no former sitting member and no Liberal candidate. It took that kind of perfect storm for Schreiner to win in Guelph, and he's hoping history repeats in Central Ontario tonight with 5-time candidate Matt Richter. And lastly, let's look at 2018 total vote percentage. The PCs won the majority government with 40.5% of the total votes cast. The NDP came second with just under 34%. The Liberals didn't crack 20%, and the Greens at just over 4.5%. And how about seats at dissolution? The Tories actually won 76 seats 4 years ago, but a number of those members were kicked out of caucus. So at dissolution, the Tories end up with 67 seats. The NDP at 38, the Liberals still at 7, the one Green, Mike Schreiner, and 8 others. That's a reference to all of those former defenestrated, as we like to call them, progressive conservatives who got the boot, and 3 vacant seats as well. That was the House at dissolution. And with that in place, we're going to start this off checking in with some policy experts who've been watching this election to see what they'll be looking for tonight. First up, let's talk affordability. The cost of everything is up. Inflation recently surpassed a 30-year high. That's certainly driven conversations as politicians went door to door. Sohaib Shahid is Director of Economic Innovation at the Conference Board of Canada, and he joins us now from Scarborough in Ontario's capital city. And Sohaib, it's good to have you back on the program. How are you tonight?
Thanks, Steve. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Just great. Thanks. Give us a sense, if we can start here, about the choices that you think Ontarians are having to make today as a result of the cost of living.
Well, Steve, affordability and cost of living is front and center in this election, and rightly so. Inflation is at more than a 30-year high. And a lot of people who are voting in this election, they have never seen inflation this high in their life. People are struggling to pay at the gas station. They're struggling to pay at a grocery store. And quite frankly, they're struggling to make ends meet. In all of this affordability talk, it's really the low-income Canadians who are being hit the hardest because they spend a larger share of their monthly expenditure on things like food and energy. But mind you, this is not just a low-income problem. This is fast becoming a middle-class problem.
In which case, what do you think in general, what do you think about what the parties have had on offer to deal with the issue of affordability?
Well, Steve, I think politicians get too much credit for when the economy is doing well and too much blame for when the economy is not doing so well. And this especially holds true for provincial politics. Having said that, there are things that political parties have proposed. For example, the Liberals, the NDP, and the Greens have talked about reducing cost for Ontarians by reducing food costs, whereas the PC party has talked about reducing the cost for Ontarians by bringing down energy prices. But the major difference between the incumbent party and its challengers is that the PC party is heavily relying on refundable tax credits, which means that Ontarians will pay less in taxes, but they won't be getting any checks in their mailboxes anytime soon, whereas the other parties are promising more direct support. So when I look at the platform promises, Steve, there are things that I do like. I like the Liberals' promise to reduce HST on food. I like the PC's party promise to bring down taxes on gas. And I like the NDP's promise to double the GST for low-income Ontarians. But Steve, as you and I know, campaigning is poetry and governing is prose. The efficacy of these measures would really depend on how well they're implemented.
Well, let me follow up with you on that idea of taking the HST off food. Almost every economist I've ever talked to over the years says monkeying with the HST, monkeying with these sales taxes or retail sales taxes is a bad idea. The more exemptions you give, the less clean the tax is and the less effective it is. And yet you say you like this idea of taking it off prepared foods. How come?
Well, the reason for this, Steve, is that food is an essential item, and food prices have skyrocketed in recent months, not only because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And if you talk to people on the ground, they'll tell you that, especially low-income Canadians, that they're struggling to pay for their food. Not only that, even some middle-class Canadians would tell you the same. In normal times, I would agree with some of the economists that you're mentioning, but these are not normal times. These are unusual times. And, times like these call for these type of unusual measures.
Would you say the same thing about the price of gas? Because, of course, environmentalists would say a high price of gas means people will be forced to consider alternatives as opposed to burning fossil fuels, which ruins our environment. As the province steps in, or as the other parties have agreed to do as well, as they step in to try to make the price of gas cheaper, they're sort of defeating themselves environmentally speaking. What's your take on that?
Steve, I think bringing taxes down on gas is I think a good thing. I'm for it. And if one of the parties is proposing it, they won't be the only ones. Other political parties in other countries are doing the same. Having said that, you mentioned the possible transition to electric vehicles. I've been hearing a lot of commentary about moving to electric vehicles and to refit homes so that we can can tackle the rise in energy prices better. While all of that is true, it is also true that low-income Canadians, they can't afford electric vehicles. They can't afford to refit their homes in some instances. And if you look at the platform promises of all political parties when it comes to electric vehicles, the dollar amount is just not enough to convince low-income Canadians to make that transition.
Okay, in our last 30 seconds here then, Saab, let me ask you, I mean, here's the reality. The Ontario government can't do a damn thing about the war in Ukraine. The Ontario government can't do a thing about supply chain problems which have caused high inflation, certainly higher than anything we've experienced in the last few decades. Can the province really do much about the issue of affordability at the end of the day?
Given the limitations, provincial politics and provincial politicians have, what they can do is to urgently act on, tackling the essentials, the basics, the necessities of life, such as food and energy, because this is where, low-income Ontarians are hurting the most. And this is where, intervention is needed. And this is where substantive intervention is needed so that, we see, a significant difference in monthly expenditures for Canadians, because a lot of the promises that have been announced by political parties, yes, they will bring down costs for Ontarians, but they just don't do enough when it comes to bringing down costs. And I think they're also a bit too complex for the average voter to understand. So I think these measures alone that have been announced so far, those alone won't be enough to convince someone to vote for one party over the other.
Gotcha. So, Hab, it's good of you to join us tonight. Enjoy election night, okay?
Thanks, Steve.
Next up, let's look more closely at that big ticket item, housing. With us now on that, in Corktown, in the provincial capital, Eric Lombardi. He's the founder of More Neighbours Toronto. Eric, it's nice to have you back on the program. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me back on the show. Excited to be here.
Terrific to have you here. Were you satisfied? Let's start here. Were you satisfied with what appeared to be a pretty prominent place for housing policy in the major party platforms in this campaign?
I was happy to see the direction the parties are taking on the issue. A lot of them made high-level commitments to doing the right thing, like 1.5 million new homes. The issue is still the lack of urgency on the campaign trail and in the details.
Okay, fill that in a little bit. What lack of urgency were you sensing?
The lack of urgency that I am seeing is, especially for the parties that did actually put out a platform, which was not the Conservatives, they paid tribute to the right concepts and the things that we need to do, and then halved what they really needed to be doing. So on promises like exclusionary zoning, great, except, we see for the Liberals' plan, 2 stories max. So when you dig into the details, what type of impact will those policy have? Not big ones, not the ones that we need.
Was there anything, Eric, that sort of jumped at you where you could say, oh, yeah, I really like that. That sounds good?
I was really happy to see that both the NDP and the Ontario Liberals proposed creating a public housing builder. There's a lot of cities and countries worldwide that have public builders that build on public property in mixed income formats to actually provide that diversity and to address needs like for those who have disabilities, who need shelter and other types of programs. And, those complement the market developments quite well in those places. And it's been a bit bizarre that it's been so behind in the conversation until now.
Do you think there's any possibility that the Conservatives might steal some of those ideas if they come back in tonight?
Not a public builder, but I think there's a lot of good ideas that they can be stealing. And, we'll see where things go if they get elected again, because they keep saying the Housing Affordability Task Force report, which was really quite a comprehensive document that I think even impressed housing advocates like me. If that really is something they start to deliver on, they could do a good job, but they've made no commitment.
Well, I think they made no commitment because they said there was not enough support at the municipal level to make a commitment. It wasn't that they rejected the ideas, they just didn't see enough support out there. Do you think that if, again, we're in the realm of speculation here, but do you think that if they get a renewed majority tonight, that might give them, who knows, the guts to go after this issue with a little more force?
It definitely gives them the time to be forgiven if they have a majority, right? And I think that's the string of hope that I am holding on to. the reality is the municipalities are failing, and it's not even like an accident. They are deliberately hostile in most cases to the types of reforms we need, because frankly, they're beholden to a very small subset of voters who A, show up during municipal elections, and B, show up and yell at them between them. And, you know, the reality is the province needs to be more prescriptive and aggressive if they really want to tackle these issues. The cities, they're not going to get it done. They won't get it done. And when given the chance, they'll do the bare minimum.
We've heard that expression before in this election campaign. Get it done. It's in your head, I can tell. Let me ask you this. Eric, do you think housing policy is a partisan issue?
No, I don't. And in More Neighbors, we really pride ourselves on having a big tent. And so we have people who are partisan, from NDP, Green, to the Conservatives, who really support us in what we're talking about. This issue isn't partisan as much as it is generational, and also I would even say rational, because I know there are a lot of older voters who look at what's happened and realize the quality of life that their children have to accept is going to be substantially lower than their own. And they see that as a fundamental economic issue too. So this sort of transcends party, and all parties have a mix of those who are pro and anti housing. And my hope is that the tide is shifting to that pro voice. We shall see. Eric Lombardi, appreciate you joining us here on Election Night on TVO. Take care. Thank you for having me. And of course, in the midst of a global pandemic, myriad concerns around healthcare came up during this campaign. Let's check in with family physician Dr. Danielle Martin, who is chair of the Department of Family and Community Medicine at the University of Toronto, and she joins us now from the west end of the provincial capital. And I know you and I talked during the election campaign, Dr. Martin, but I wonder whether you think healthcare got the attention that it either normally does or should get during the course of an election campaign. What do you think?
I think it got the right amount of attention, Steve. It's hard to imagine an election in the middle of a global pandemic that wouldn't be a healthcare election. What I think is going to be hard is to move from conversations looking backward to the conversation looking forward that we need to have, because although we may be done with the pandemic, it's not done with its effects on our healthcare system. Well, elections are kind of, as Kim Campbell once said, odd times to be talking about serious policy. But having said that, do you think the major parties demonstrated some understanding of what they learned over the past 2 years that they could therefore bring forward in the event that they win? I think that all the parties showed an awareness of the incredible importance of rethinking aging, which is going to be a very important policy file thinking forward. We saw the effects in long-term care of this pandemic and the inexcusable deaths of seniors across Ontario and beyond. And I think for all of us, aging, while it beats the alternative, is a pretty scary prospect in the province of Ontario right now. And so we really need to think about, are we building long-term care beds? Is that really what we want to be doing? What kinds of long-term care beds are we building? Or more importantly, what can we be doing to support aging in our homes, in our communities where all of us want to age and where most Canadians want to die? And so being able to have that conversation outside of an election campaign in a really thoughtful way about aging in place is going to be critical. Our healthcare system cannot withstand another round of lack of community resources for older people. I'm curious as to what you think in terms of whether we really did have a bit of that conversation during this election campaign. I mean, it did seem to me that long-term care came up as an issue. Did make proposals, maybe more than in any other election in my lifetime. Did you see it that way as well? I did, and I'm heartened by that. Again, though, I think a lot of the focus was on what went wrong and what we were ill prepared for in the last round, and that's understandable. And part of democracy is holding ourselves and each other to account for the things we do well and the things that should have gone better over the course of this government's last term. But the hard part comes after, right? And I do think that it's These election platforms, of course, were high level. Of course, they were very sort of vague and broad commitments. The question of whether we're going to be able to help people to age at home, to connect them to family doctors, to connect them to home care services, to prevent them from ending up in long-term care, and to prevent them from ending up in the emergency department in crisis, it's a really important topic, and it should be one of the biggest learnings of this pandemic. So I am heartened, as you are, that there was a long-term care conversation in this election. Now we're going to have to start talking about what comes next.
Well, what we know for sure comes next is we're going to have a new health minister, because the previous health minister, Christine Elliott, didn't run again. So regardless of who wins tonight, we're getting a new health minister in the province of Ontario, starting either when the current government gets re-sworn in or when the new government gets sworn in. In which case, if you've got their ear right now, what do you want to tell them?
We have a very serious fallout now from the pandemic today in our hospitals, in our emergency departments, in our family doctors' offices that is not identifiable as COVID related, but is going to be the challenge of the next 4 years, to figure out how to reconnect people with care who were lost to follow-up, to deal with all of the folks who are showing up in the emergency department and being admitted to the hospital with more advanced illness because it wasn't caught during this difficult time, to deal with the burnout that our healthcare workers are facing, the number of people who are coming into family doctors' offices now with a list of 7, 8, 10 items that they've been putting off over the last couple of years, the profound mental health impacts. I mean, this is the ripple effect of what we've lived through for the last 2 years. And if we don't figure out how to shore up our capacity in the community, in family doctors' offices, in primary care practices, in team-based care, so that people can get the care they need close to home, they're all going to land in the emergency department. And our emergency departments are already under tremendous pressure right now, Steve. If you talk to anyone who's had to go to the emerge, or if you talk to anyone who works in an emerge, they will tell you that we are beyond our capacity right now. And so the solution to that is not more departments and hospital beds. The solution to that is the alternative, which is family medicine, primary care, home care. We've been having this conversation in this province for decades about the need to move our resources and our attention out of hospitals and closer to home. That is the challenge for the incoming health minister, for sure, because we're not going to be able to have all roads lead to the hospital in the healthcare system any longer.
That is profoundly important advice for both us and for the next Minister of Health. So, Dr. Danielle Martin, we're really grateful you could share some of your election night with us. Enjoy the evening, if that's possible, and talk to you down the road sometime, I'm sure.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, all of that sets us up nicely to talk a little politics on this election night, hardball politics. With us for that, at Doug Ford's campaign headquarters at the Toronto Congress Centre in Etobicoke, let's welcome Alison Smith. She's the publisher of Queen's Park Today and co-host of the Canada Land Provincial Politics podcast, Wag the Doug. Alison, hoping you can hear me okay. How are you?
Hi, Steve. I'm great. Just tucked into a little alcove here at the Congress Centre. They're just about to open up the space to the public. Doug Ford, it's all set up. Lots of PC blue lights in the ballroom around the corner from me. Doug Ford's not here. He's watching the results roll in with his family at home, but he's expected to give a speech around 10 p.m.
Everybody thinks they know what's going to happen tonight, Alison, so it's not to try to take all the drama out of it. There will still be some dramatic moments tonight, but I am curious as to what you thought, if in fact the night unfolds as many think it will. What worked well for the PCs in this campaign?
I think the PCs, they really held a disciplined campaign. Doug Ford never got off track with his messaging. Anywhere he went in the province, he was so quick to discuss the highway. There's highways everywhere in Ontario, and I think we heard about almost all of them, and a few bridges too. So him really sticking to the concrete, the literal concrete, and keeping away from the media and the possibility of making mistakes, which is what his team really did, kept him in a safe place. We didn't see the the board of 2018, we saw a really restrained politician.
You know, one of, well, let me put it this way. I don't want to give away this person's identity, but suffice to say it's somebody who's close to the Progressive Conservative Party, who knows Mr. Ford well, who's had lots of contact with him over the years, who said Corey Teneycke has kept him on an incredibly tight leash throughout this campaign. Now, we know Doug Ford doesn't like being on that kind of leash. Why do you think he went along with it?
I think he wanted to win. And I think the PCs around him wanted to win. And I think it became clear, you know, last spring when during the third wave of COVID, with the police ignoring his orders and him trying to shut down playgrounds, you know, it was very soon after that Corey Teneycke got involved. And ever since then, yeah, Ford's been on a leash. Now, I guess what remains to be seen is if he and the PCs win another majority, which seems like is going to happen. What is the PC party going to be like then? You know, they've been playing pretty nice for the past year and a half, but they're gonna be emboldened to, you know, do whatever they mostly want, you know, for the next 4 years, or at least the first half of another term. So that's going to be, yeah, interesting to watch.
And let me just finally ask you, you know, you were sort of out there on the hustings every day for the last 29. What was memorable for you about this campaign?
I think it was, you know, the way that honestly that things turned around, and that Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca and NDP leader Andrea Horwath almost ended up attacking each other for the final part of the campaign, if not more than that. I'm thinking particularly of Del Duca's charge that Andrea Horwath was being sexist and misogynistic by going after one of his candidates who seems to have committed some level of electoral fraud with their campaign signatures. And I think that was a low point of the campaign, a memorable one, but you know, that was sort of, I think, the nastiest moment, and I don't know how that's going to affect voters going into the polls, but I think it was a side of Stephen Del Duca that we hadn't seen necessarily, and you know, Andrea Horwath bounced back okay, but what it really is a microcosm of, you know, their dislike for each other. And, you know, if Stephen Del Duca ends up picking up a seat tonight, which he obviously hopes he will, even though it's going to be a tough fight in Vaughan Woodbridge, I think we're going to have two parties in the opposition benches that aren't fans of each other, maybe even more than before the election campaign started.
No kidding. Allison, we thank you very much for taking yourself away from the action down there at the Congress Center. We'll let you get back to it. And thanks for spending some time with us here on TVO tonight.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Not at all. Now, let us give you some details about what we've got in store this evening. Shortly, we'll introduce our panel for the evening. As well, we'll touch base with Erin Kelly, you know her, to find out what Polly, the artificial intelligence algorithm, sees unfolding. As well, we've got our results producers on the 4th floor of this building, ready to pounce once the polls close. I should just take a pause here and say we're still almost 35 minutes away from that happening, and there are, I made a note of it here somewhere, is it 19 polls? There's 19 polls, I think, across the province of Ontario that are going to stay open the clock because of, there are always irregularities on election night, and there will be some irregularities with these polls. 4 of them, interestingly enough, about 10 minutes from here in University Rosedale. Not sure what's going on there, but the polls in some ridings will be open anywhere from, I don't know, 15 minutes to 2 hours later. So some returns may be delayed. We'll keep on top of that, obviously. Also on the 4th floor tonight, Nam Kiwanuka is standing by with my On Poly podcast pal, John Michael McGrath, for some analysis as this night unfolds. Good evening, you two, and I pass it over to you now.
Hey, Steve, looking good.
Good evening.
It's nice to see you, John Michael.
Great to see you, Nam.
So, you know, we all know that 2018 was not a very good time for the Liberal Party. There's a lot riding for the Liberal brand tonight. Can the Liberals win back even one seat in southwestern Ontario?
Well, they're certainly trying to. You know, southwestern Ontario really tells a story about what happened to the Liberal Party over the last decade plus.
What happened?
In 2018, they got wiped out entirely. and you can see the results on the map now. A sea of blue in more rural ridings, and the NDP really winning in the larger cities in the southwest. So one riding that the Liberals have a lot of hope invested in tonight is London North Centre. That's where Kate Graham is running. She challenged Stephen Del Duca for the leadership back in 2020. Obviously did not win, but has been an integral part of the Liberal team since. She helped co-develop the platform that they are running on this time around. And so the Liberals would really, really like to get her a seat in the legislature because, I think a lot of people see her as one of the future faces of the party. In the riding of Essex, you've got a different story where the NDP the former sitting member, Taras Natashak, is not running again. The NDP have tapped Ron Leclerc to run there. But the Tories would really like to take that seat. They have been pushing hard. We've talked a lot in this election about the Tory outreach to labor unions, for example, and that's the kind of riding where we're going to see whether that is actually going to materialize in taking a seat from the NDP, as they would very much like to.
Well, what soured the Liberals' relationship with southwestern Ontario?
There were a bunch of things that happened during the recession in 2008. A lot of manufacturing jobs were lost in southwestern Ontario, and so obviously that hurt the Liberal brand. They were in power at the time, and people tend to blame the government in power when they lose their jobs. But there were also things like Liberal energy policies. The spread of wind power in rural areas of the province was not always very popular, and even places where you didn't actually get a lot of wind turbines built, that attitude was seen as very sort of Toronto-centered, and it really hurt the Liberal Party in rural Ontario.
Well, let's talk about Northern Ontario. Does anything really change in the north?
Well, the biggest change that we saw right at the beginning of the campaign was Liberal MPP Michael Gravel, who opted not to run again in this election. He very much wanted to, but health concerns took him out of the race pretty early on in the riding of Thunder Bay Superior North. He has been in the MPP in that riding since it was created in 1999, and he wanted to run again, as I said, just couldn't do it. But it was a narrow win last time. He only won by about 800 votes or so, and this time the NDP really hope that they can take that riding back. They are running Shelby Chung, a local city councillor, would really, as I say, they would like to take that one.
Well, I know this past month you and Steve have both been so busy. You've been putting out the podcast every day.
Yes.
And I want to know, how are you feeling about tonight? What's something that you're looking forward to seeing?
Well, we have one more episode that we are going to do tomorrow, and then I am going to enjoy the weekend, and I'm going to try not to think too hard about Ontario politics for a few days until we come back to work on Monday.
Well, great job, both you and Steve.
Thanks so much.
Steve, it's back to you.
I just want to make sure, Nam, you did not hear him use the word incumbent ever, did you? I'm just checking.
Never. I would never tattletale on John Michael.
Former sitting members only.
Sitting members, right. Former sitting members. That's right. We don't say incumbents here. All right. Thanks, you two. And yes, John Michael, I look forward to wrapping all this up with you tomorrow on our On Poly podcast. Okay, look who's here. In the actual studio, not on Skype for once in the last 2 years. There's Aaron Kelly from Advanced Symbolics, Inc. We are going to, I should say off the top, you're not allowed to, by law, tell us what the seat count is going to be right now, even though you pretty much know. After 9 o'clock, you're allowed to do that. So let's do a few things aside of that in the moment. Was this a campaign about issues? What did Paulie say about that?
No, not at all. This was very much an election about a cult of personality. Which leader did people like the most? Who did they trust the most? Who did they believe the most? And it was really about who was the most affable, who was the most approachable. And I don't know if we can say who that was, but it was very much people were talking about who do I believe, who do I think will keep their promises, and who do I see myself reflected in.
Well, one thing we certainly can do right now is set up two of what are likely to be the most important and close contests of the night. So without further ado, let's do that, because you've got Paulie's ridings to watch, starting with the leader of the Liberal parties. We're really interested in this one.
Well, this one's really interesting because Paulie sees, this is Stephen Del Duca's riding. He is the leader of the Liberal Party, and Paulie sees that he is within the margin of error in his battle with the seat with Michael Tibollo from the Conservative Party. Now, Michael Tibollo had the seat before the election was called. Can Stephen Del Duca win this seat from Michael Tibollo? It's going to be a really, really tight race, and it's really going to depend on whether or not Stephen Del Duca's team can get that vote out, because
Del Duca had it from 2012 to 2018. Tibollo won it 4 years ago. The rematch is on tonight. Next one. This is, since 1977, a bellwether riding. Whoever wins this riding, their party wins the election. What's it looking like tonight?
So here's really interesting. So it's very tight, it's very close, and so it could go either way through the PCs or the Liberals. But what was interesting is Polly said this would be a clear PC riding were it not for a few issues. The cuts that the PCs made to ambulance service, a lot of people in the riding upset about that. The fact that Mr. Ford did not visit during the storm has people very, very upset. And so it would have been a clear PC riding, but there are issues pulling away primarily around healthcare and healthcare spending. So that'll be a difficult one for the PCs to maybe hold on to.
All right. That would be very interesting if they lost that tonight and yet won government, because, as we say, this riding reliably votes for the governing party for the winning party every time since 1977. Let's take a look at the next graphic, if we could, Sheldon. And this is popular support over the course of the election campaign. And as we can say, I think John Michael McGrath's got this line about three snakes in tunnels. You know, essentially going across, there's been no up and down like this, but let's just take a look here, Aaron. There's there's a little blip up here of Del Duca support. What happened there?
That was really people discovering Stephen Del Duca. So he was, I mean, as you remember, the Liberals, when the election was called, they had 7 seats. So they had 7 seats in the last 4 years. Nobody really knew the Liberal Party. They hadn't been in the news. And then Stephen Del Duca came out strong with some promises that were easy to understand. Buck a ride, I'm going to cap class sizes at 20 students, and people liked that. The problem is it didn't give him enough traction to keep going because they weren't topics that people talked a lot about. Nobody could disagree with Buck a ride, so it didn't get that polarization.
Okay, I wonder, Sheldon, if you can bring that back, because I want to question here about the Conservative line, which again, as we looked at it on the graph, pretty straight across, then a dip. Not a big dip, but a dip before it recovers.
That is people being energized by the Liberals rising and saying, because some of these Conservative voters started to think, well, maybe I will change my vote. I was Conservative, but the Liberals are looking interesting. They've got some interesting platforms. People looking and considering Stephen Del Duca during that time.
You were here 4 years ago. You want to know what you said the morning after 4 years ago?
No.
Well, we're going to tell you anyway. Which camera am I looking at? Because they're going to throw the clip here. Over here. Okay. Sheldon, you in that control room? You want to tell us what Aaron said 4 years ago? Roll it, please.
I think Doug Ford is going to be judged by the results that he gets, and that's got to be improvement in people's day-to-day lives. I think people knew what they were getting when they voted for Doug Ford.
Okay, people knew what they were getting when they voted for Doug Ford 4 years ago, and here we are 4 years later. What do you say now?
Well, it's interesting because I think Doug Ford, people held the bar really low for Doug Ford. I mean, 4 years ago, they were really voting against Kathleen Wynne. That was the feeling. And people said Doug Ford would run a very harried administration like his brother. They were comparing him to Rob Ford. They were saying he was Canada's Donald Trump. And I think what we saw in the data looking at this campaign is that people were really surprised by Doug Ford. They actually got more than what they thought they were voting for when they voted for Doug Ford. He ended up being a person who could cooperate, who could be sympathetic. And people were really impressed when they had the protests you remember when people were protesting mask wearing and the mandates. And these were quite possibly his supporters, and he called them a bunch of yahoos and told them to go home, where people expected him to sympathize with them, because that's what. So people were very surprised by that, and so that's what you're seeing now through this campaign. When his support went up, it's because they see that Doug Ford maybe can be good for the economy, like the PC brand, but he's also capable of cooperating when he needs to.
He came up with one of his great Fordism lines, which was the cheese slipped off the crackers for those folks. That was Doug Ford. Okay, Aaron, you're going to be with us all night long. We're going to let you get back to your computer so you can see what's going on. Tell us what Polly thinks, and then we'll check back later, okay?
Great, thank you.
Good stuff. Aaron Kelly from Advanced Symbolics, Inc. Okay, let me come over here and rejoin this group here, who I'm delighted to say have come from near and far to join us for this historic occasion. Can we please introduce Janet Ecker, the former Ontario Progressive Conservative Cabinet Minister, the Reverend Sherry DeNovo, the former Ontario NDP MPP for the riding of Parkdale Hyde Park, Dwight Duncan, the former Deputy Premier for the province and Liberal Cabinet Minister, and somebody new on our set tonight, Hannah Conover-Arthurs, who is the Young Greens co-chair for the party's executive, and she was a federal Green Party candidate in 2019 in the riding of Davenport. So you all bring greater or lesser extents of electoral experience to this table tonight, and I'm grateful to all of you for making the trip. Nice to see some of you again and for the first time. Now, let us, where are we here? First thing to update, 27 polls. 27 polls which are delayed in closing. So there will be 27 polls open past 9 o'clock. We'll see if that affects anything at all. How are we doing on time? We got some time here. I want to ask all of you, in your election careers, Janet, to you first. It's 20 minutes before the polls close. You're a candidate. What are you doing right now? Biting nails.
Yeah. I mean, you're going over numbers, you're talking to your team, you may be sitting at home. It depends what you do to sort of stay out of the way, because by this stage of the game, there's not too much that the candidate can do anymore. It's all up to your team. So stay out of the way, stay home, do whatever it is that's going to keep you relaxed and ready for whatever the evening holds. And again, sometimes you're pretty sure you know the result, sometimes you don't. And
did you always know the result on election night in your riding? Did you always know?
The first two times, yes. We're pretty sure we had it won. The third time, we knew it was going to be close, and it was close, but I lost, so.
And you didn't know going in you were going to lose that night? You thought you still might have it?
Yeah, I thought we might have it was about a couple hundred votes either way would have done it. But anyway, such is life, such is history.
Indeed. Sherry, what do you do in 20 minutes before the polls close?
Every election that I ran, I had dinner with a friend and tried to pretend that nothing else was happening. And my EA was usually with us, madly on her BlackBerry, then iPhone. And I think the closest election, Steve, was when, and I knew that we might have a problem, was when she went downstairs and I heard her throwing up in the washroom. But other than that, dinner with a friend and the victory, they always call it a victory, whatever happens, haul down the street and just tell me when it's over and I will make my entrance and what happens. So luckily I won every time.
I was going to say, you never lost.
I never lost.
Yeah. How many elections in a row?
4. Yeah.
4-0.
Yeah.
The Leafs would like that kind of record in the playoffs one year.
Well,
Good luck.
I'm going to use the line I used before. It's not the despair that gets you, it's the hope.
That's such a good line. 20 minutes until the polls close. What are you doing?
Cooking a nice meal. Well, we'd be finishing by that time. And I'd be nervous. The first election I thought I was going to lose was the 95 Harris sweep. By the end, I'm pretty confident. And the last one, 2011, I was quite surprised by the result overall of the province. And
meaning what? The Liberals won.
Well, I know, but I wasn't sure we were going to win that election. So yeah, I'd usually cook a meal for some people, and we'd enjoy that. I wouldn't start the wine until after the count was done. But
the wine made the speech better, though, didn't it?
Well, yeah, sometimes not so much. But yeah, that's what I would do.
Now, you won every time, right?
I did, yes, sir.
And did you know going in on election night you were going to win every time?
Other than 95. I genuinely thought I was going to lose.
And you won?
I won by 200 votes. And it was, a Harris sweep.
200 was the least you won by? What was the most you ever won by?
I got up to 54 or 55%, whatever that translated to, and I stayed in that range. And even in 2011, it came down, but it was still pretty comfortable.
Gotcha. Hannah, you've done this once.
Yes.
What was election night for you like in 2019?
I was celebrating. I felt like relieved. I was like, thank God it's over. I didn't I didn't assume I was going to win. That wasn't why I was running. So I felt proud of myself. I felt like, you know, running as a candidate is quite a big feat. And so getting my name in the race when I was young and having support of people I didn't even think would support me and having a group of friends together to see the election results, I was just like, thank God this is over and I can get back to my life. And I was just proud of myself, yeah.
Now, Green Party candidates obviously go into elections with different expectations than these three other mainline parties.
Yes.
And, I mean, we saw in the last federal election, you know, whatever it is, 338 Green candidates, 2-1. So most of you know you're going down.
Yeah.
Does that make the effort, you know how many people out there think, why bother doing it? Why bother doing it?
Yeah, not winning actually for me was the best part in a way, because the reason that I ran, and I think what drew me to being a candidate in the first place, is representation, you know? There needs to be a diverse opinions at the table. And just because you're not the person who's going to come out in front and win the whole thing doesn't mean that your opinion and your views are not worthy at the table. You know, I felt really strongly about running Green candidates in all of the ridings because people should have the option to vote Green. Mm-hmm. And just because people aren't voting Green right now yet, Greens are the party of the future. So as we see the degradation of our environment and the degradation of the things that we call home, people are going to start to change their vote a bit, because I don't think that the old parties are really taking the threat of the climate crisis to heart. And for people my age especially, we cannot look past it. It's like every single decision in our lives is based around what we will or will not be able to look forward to in our future. So
we are all of a certain generation here, and one of these things is not like the other. So I'm going to ask you, how old were you when you ran for the first time?
I was 24.
You were 24 in 2019 when you ran. Good for you. That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, we have given all of you some homework in the lead up to tonight, and the homework was, give us a couple of ridings that you are watching tonight with particular interest and tell us why. And again, we'll go in order of precedence here. So Janet Ecker, your party was in first place in the last House, so here we go. Sheldon, if you would, let's bring up the returns from, well, here are the candidates. We have no returns yet, obviously. Here are the candidates for Don Valley West, which the Liberals won last time. Kathleen Wynne's riding by 181. Why did you pick this riding?
Well, because I think Mark Saunders has turned out to be a very, very good candidate and performed very, very well. And I think it's interesting when you see how that riding went last time. I was just quite curious about how it was going to go this time. You know, whether we were going to win that seat. It's tough for Tories sometimes in urban seats, but Mark's done a really, really good job. I mean, Stephanie's a very strong candidate. There's no question about that.
So's Irwin Elman for the NDP, although...
Yes, I don't know Irwin as well, but no. So anyway, I was hoping that Mark might do it because I think he's going to bring a lot to a Ford government, if there is a Ford government, to the caucus.
For those who may not remember, he, of course, is the former police chief in the city of Toronto, and a rather late acquisition by Doug Ford's team to run in this riding. So he represents the blue team tonight, and we'll keep an eye on that one, obviously, Kathleen Wynne's former riding. Your second riding that you picked is in the northwest end of Toronto, and that's York Southwestern. Why this one?
Well, let's see what the Ford brand is all about.
Right on.
Michael Ford has, you know, the Premier's nephew. This isn't where he's been running as a councillor in Toronto. This is not where his councillor seat was. It's sort of next door, if you will. But he's been doing a good job as councillor, good job as a candidate. Faisal Hassan's a very strong NDP, very strong community member, and so this will be a good win if we can do it. And I think it'll, you know, give some sense of how strong the Ford brand is. Mm-hmm.
Just before we go to Sherry DeNovo's two ridings, can we take a look at what's happening in the headquarters of the former leader of Her Majesty's official opposition? There's Andrea Horwath, who, as we suggested in the opening tonight, led her team for the fourth campaign as Ontario NDP leader. That's a lot. Not necessarily for your party. You do allow leaders to stick around more than once for a loss.
We do.
Yeah. I think Bob Rae did 85, 87, 90, and 95, so he had 4 elections. Donald McDonald before him, he might have had 4 as well, maybe more. No, 4. Okay, let's look at your ridings. I'm babbling here. Sheldon, if you would, Sherry DeNovo's ridings to watch, and you've picked Toronto Centre first. How come?
Well, first of all, Kristen Wong-Tam, she's a friend. She's an incredibly strong candidate, really good pick by the party. And, of course, the city councillor for that area as well. David Morris, also strong candidate, has run several times for the Liberal Party. Traditionally a Liberal seat, although won by us, Suze Morrison, in the last election when the Liberals crumbled. So it's going to be tight, and it'll be very interesting. I think it might be a kind of bellwether riding in the sense of who's going to be the official opposition.
It's interesting you say it's going to be tight because your party won it last time by 12,000 votes almost. You don't see that kind of lead tonight?
Well, it's a new day, and the Liberal Party has bounced back, and this is one of their traditional holes, this seat. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, their machine against our machine in that riding, and 2 good candidates running against each other.
This is Glenn Murray, this is George Smitherman, this is long Liberal history in this area. All right, the second riding you picked is somebody who's been a high-profile member of the NDP caucus for a decade or so now. Why did you pick Waterloo?
Catherine Fife, phenomenally strong for many, many years. She was our finance critic, very smart, and up against, though, a PC candidate, although new in, you know, when you look at the polling, especially in that neck of the woods, we're seeing this wave of blue. So the question is, can she hold her seat? Or will she lose it? Of course, I'm hoping that she keeps her seat. But again, a kind of bellwether in the sense of where is the province going?
And again, a 10,000 vote victory for the NDP 4 years ago. An indication, well, you just said you're not even sure she's going to hold the seat?
I wouldn't go that far. I think she will hold the seat, but I think it will be a tight race, considering it was a 10,000 vote margin the last time. And that's an indication of the PC presence and strength.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, Dwight Duncan, your 2 seats. You want to start in the 905 with the riding of Oakville. How come?
Well, a strong Liberal candidate there. The Conservative incumbent appears to be one of the more vulnerable in the 905. I see this riding as one Ford went into it himself last Friday, which tells me that that is one that they're a bit worried about. They don't send the Premier to a riding that close to an election unless you're worried about that particular seat. So I think that I tried to pick ridings that I thought had a provincial bearing. So if we do well there, we're going to do better than people thought we would do perhaps in the 905. Not to say, by the way, that we're going to sweep the 905, but you know that if you get 5 seats versus 7 seats, it's a difference. And so that was one that I picked.
What was interesting I found about Oakville last time, 4 years ago, the PCs won it by 4,500, and the Liberals finished a very strong second. And this was in an election where the Liberals finished 3rd in 100 ridings across the province. They came second, and a strong second in Oakville. So, yeah, this one should be tight tonight. The second one you picked is in the nation's capital, Ottawa Centre. How come?
It's always a tight NDP Liberal fight. And I think that's going to be one of the stories tonight. You know, how do the, you know, Sherry talked about Toronto Centre, and this is another one. Again, we have nominated a very strong candidate in Katie Gibbs. As Ottawa Centre goes, I suspect that will have a lot to say about the province and the relationship between New Democrats, the results and relationship between New Democrats and Liberals.
It was a real indication 4 years ago of how far the Liberals had fallen, because that is normally a tight Liberal-NDP fight. The NDP won it by 8,500 votes last time. It was big.
Defeated Yasser Naqvi, who has come back as a federal member of Parliament. And
for the same riding.
Yeah, for the same riding. And so, you know, it's difficult. The Liberals had such a bad night in 2018. I'm probably a little more cautious than some of my colleagues here about interpreting how 2018 impacts on this election. But those are ridings, I think, that are indicative of the Liberal-Tory race and the NDP-Liberal race, the 2 races that are going to be going on tonight.
Okay, Hannah, we're going to get your 2 ridings now, and we're going to start in the riding that your leader has talked about nonstop for the last 29 days.
Yes.
Parry Sound, Muskoka. What do you like this fight?
Yeah, this riding, it's kind of exciting. I'm just catching on to it recently that this is like a really close race for the Greens. And I know that the Liberals are not running a candidate this year, and the incumbent, the Conservative incumbent, is not running again. So there's kind of like a hole there that could be filled by a Green seat. I know that Matt Richter, he's run quite a few times for the Greens, so I think he's got a little bit of name recognition, and he's just really excited to get things done. I think that it makes sense that a riding like Parry Sound Muskoka would be drawn to the Greens because it's such a beautiful part of our province, and if anybody cares about maintaining the beauty of that riding, then they should be voting Green. If not be voting Green.
Now, this is attempt number 5 for Matt Richter.
Exactly.
He first ran in 2007 in this riding. Wow. This is the riding of Norm Miller once upon a time. He's the former sitting member you referred to. His dad, Frank Miller, represented this area, former Premier of Ontario, from 1971 until he left. So lots of Tory history here. They won it by 12,000 last time.
Yeah.
We'll watch that one tonight. The second one you've picked is in downtown Toronto, at just a few subway stops south of where we are right now, University Rosedale. How come?
Yeah, I picked University Rosedale because Diane Sachs is a really strong candidate that we are running. I've had the pleasure of working alongside Diane a bit, and she used to be the Environmental Commissioner for Ontario. And I don't think that we're necessarily going to win that seat, but I see that there's a rise in Green votes in the city. It seems like it's very difficult to get Green seats in the city, and I know that the former candidate Tim Grant has run quite a few times, and that seems to be the case for Greens. It's like you have to just keep on running, and build up some name recognition. But with that persistence, sometimes there's a breakthrough, and you see that there's a larger percentage of Green votes in University Rosedale than most Toronto ridings. So
I don't think anybody will have difficulty figuring out what this is on your screens right now. Yes, the leader of the PC party and 26th Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, with his wife Carla and 2 of his daughters, are watching some coverage tonight. They are not, as Alison Smith told us earlier, at the Toronto Congress Centre yet. They are in a different location watching. And in the meantime, the Premier does his thing. I want to do one more thing with all of you until the polls are about 4 minutes away from polls closing. So let's check in on your riding, shall we? Sheldon, you want to do this? Let's bring up Pickering-Uxbridge. I know you ran in a bunch of different ridings in that area, but essentially, Pickering-Uxbridge is the one that's there now. The PCs won it by 5,400 4 years ago. What do you think tonight?
Well, I think Peter stands a really, really good chance. I mean, he was finance minister. He's worked the riding really well. But what's happening in Durham, while those ridings, and I had Ajax and Pickering, tended to very much go with the government. You know, I mean, if your party won, you won those 2 seats. But one of the things that's happened, of course, in Pickering-Uxbridge was the tornado in Uxbridge. So they lost about 10 days of campaigning because you just can't do that, you know, when people are trying to put their lives back together. You know, that was a bit of a challenge for them. There's also some of the independent, the Ontario Party and the New Blue Party, you know, may pull out a little bit there, whether it's 5%, 4%, 6%, it's tough to know. And the NDP has not been very strong in Durham this time. So usually you can win those seats when there's that split between the Liberals and the NDP, and when the NDP is down as low as it appears to be, it makes it tougher for a Tory. So, Peter, it could be a tough fight.
Well, 4 years ago, the NDP was not low in High Park. Parkdale High Park gave the NDP a victory by 22,600 votes 4 years ago. Let's bring this one up. And this is Butila Karposhe, who used to work for you. She's the former sitting member there. What do you anticipate for tonight here?
I expect that she will win by a huge margin. And I drove around the riding today, Steve, and saw very few Liberal signs, which is incredibly unusual in our riding, because usually it's a fight between the Liberals and the NDP. We have a Liberal federally. And, you know, so this is very unusual. And again, of course, the Liberals collapsed in 2018, as we all know. So that might be more understandable back then, but it seems like that's holding. And it's an incredible team. She'll pull it off.
Karim Bardisi, the name might sound familiar. He was Dalton McGuinty's senior policy advisor back in the day.
Again, a good candidate, but not going to win.
Tough riding. Dwight Duncan, you ran in Windsor-Tecumseh,
yes,
which the NDP took by 13,500 last time. Let's bring up those returns, or at least the showdown that we're expecting for tonight, and tell us what you think happens here.
So this is part of what I'm calling, and a number of Liberals are calling the orange squeeze, as opposed to the orange crush of 2011. And in my riding, the Conservatives have a very good shot at picking it up. The first time since, I think, the late 1950s that they are even in competition. They've nominated a good candidate. We've got a terrific candidate in Gary Kasjak. The NDP have nominated well. I don't know the Green candidate, but I will say that the Windsor-Essex region in general will be interesting to watch tonight.
Okay. It is 9 o'clock. And we know what that means. It's 9 p.m. You didn't run provincially last time, so that's why we're skipping Davenport. It is 9 o'clock Eastern Time here in the province of Ontario, at least in this part of the province. We know in Kenora, they're still an hour behind us. In any event, I'm Steve Paikin, and we are delighted to welcome you to our election 2022 coverage for the evening. We actually started at 8 o'clock, setting it all up. We're about to get returns coming in almost any minute now, I'm sure, as the polls across the province close. And then we will keep it here all night long to bring you returns, to bring you analysis, and of course to bring you the speeches of the winners and losers, whoever that may be. We have a lot of questions we need to ask tonight. Obviously, is Doug Ford going to win? Is he going to win a majority government? Who's going to come second? The Liberals last time had a historic crushing defeat. Some polls suggest they may come second tonight and take that job away, the official opposition job, from the NDP. Will the NDP fall into third place? If they do, is that the end of Andrea Horwath and her time at Queen's Park? If the Liberals don't come second and Stephen Del Duca doesn't win his seat, is that the end of Stephen Del Duca's career at Queen's Park? Lots to figure out. We want to mention a couple of other things. Whether you're watching us on television or on one of our streaming services, we want to remind you that you can go to tvo.org. There's interactive stuff there that you can deal with in real time. Drop us a note. Engage in this election campaign. Tell us what you think. You can do that on our Twitter feed as well. That's twitter.com/theagenda. Now, we want to take you through what's on the screen. I got to do it this way. In the column over here, we're going to show you leading and elected MPPs all night long. That will stay there. And depending on who's in first with the most leading and elected, those standings will remain. And you can see the magic number at the bottom of the screen there, 63. That's what we will be watching for all night. In a 124-seat Ontario legislature, 63 gets you a majority government. You've heard all the predictions, of course, that Doug Ford will get there tonight. We shall see. Just below me, all night long, you're going to see all 124 riding returns scrolling through. There's Dufferin-Caledon, where Sylvia Jones, the Solicitor General, is running for re-election. There's the riding of Durham, where Janet Ecker's from. Todd McCarthy is a new candidate this time, running for the PCs. Robin Martin, seeking re-election in the riding of Eglinton Lawrence, just up the street from where we are. Elgin, anyway, you see how we do this, on and on. If there's a little star, a little asterisk beside the candidate's name, there isn't one there because there's no former sitting member there. But in some ridings, for example, Kinga Surma in Etobicoke Centre, she's got the star beside her name because she's the former sitting member in the last legislature. So all of that will be unfolding in the next little while. And here we go. Let's do the 416. Some of the races we want to highlight in the 416. It will be a shock of all shocks if Doug Ford loses his riding. I think we can safely say that isn't going to happen tonight. But he's running for re-election in the riding of Etobicoke North, the asterisk beside his name indicating he's the former sitting member there. We are now going to go over, are we going to go to Aaron now? Let's do that now. All right. I'll be right back, gang, okay? Stay put. Don't go anywhere, because we're going to talk to Aaron Kelly of Advanced Symbolics, Inc. Aaron, come on in and join me here. There we go. Lovely to see you again. We are now polls closed, with the exception of 20-some-odd polls, which are staying late for irregularities. But you can now share Polly's findings on what she thinks the results of tonight's vote will be. So, Sheldon, you want to bring that up, and you can take us through it.
Okay. All All right, so as you see very clearly, the Progressive Conservatives just clear out of the gate, guaranteed a majority government.
Guaranteed?
According to Polly. So this line here is the seats that they need to form a majority government. Polly is seeing that they'll get anywhere from 74 on the low end to 89 on the high end, with 82 being the most likely. Now there are lots of ridings that are still very close, so that's why you have that spread, that margin of error, that confidence interval.
They got 76 last time. So if it's 82 tonight,
they're
better, obviously.
Better than they were before.
Yeah.
So the real question for Polly tonight is who's going to form the official opposition. While we have the Liberals slightly ahead, this is really not statistically significant. They're basically in a dead heat at 23 seats at the, in the middle, with the Liberals having the wider spread, so between 16 and 29, and the NDP. And this is because of the NDP's seat efficiency. They're very efficient in the cities, in the urban areas, and they don't really have too much going on outside of that. So they have to win those urban seats in order to, to get on the high end here. Whereas the Liberals they're spread out in their options, and they've got their candidates in more places, let's just say. But it really depends on getting out the vote. We don't know who's going to be the official opposition tonight, basically.
It's an odd phenomenon with the Liberal vote, because it isn't as efficient as the NDP vote is, that they can actually come second in the total vote and third in the seat count. And that's happened to them 4 times previously in Ontario history, where they come second in total votes and third in seats. So the NDP's obviously, to the extent they're hoping for anything, that's probably what they're hoping for tonight. Yeah,
exactly, to get at that efficient vote. And the Liberals are second in the popular vote today. They're leading them by about 6 or 7% in the popular vote. So,
all right, should we do some Polly tight races right now?
And we only see the Greens getting 1.
Yeah, Mike Schreiner's, I see that, yeah. All right, Polly's tight races. Take us through these. Kitchener Centre.
Right, so Kitchener Centre is really interesting because this is the only riding in southwestern Ontario that Polly feels the Liberals have a shot. So it's a tie, well, it's not a tie, it's close. It's within the margin of error between the NDP and the Liberals. So it'll be really interesting to see tonight, do they get that, do the Liberals manage to break through in southwestern Ontario?
Let's keep checking these out, because you just checked your computer before coming out here into the studio and determining that these are tight races.
Yeah, exactly. So Kingston and the Islands, this one is also a tight race. I believe this one is PC versus Liberal. And in Kingston and the Islands, this one's really about affordability. People in Kingston not used to Toronto home prices, et cetera, and they're talking about homelessness in Kingston. So that is really the leading issue there. Who is going to help with affordability and also investment in healthcare and things like that? That's the big issue in this area.
NDP held this seat in the previous legislature, although their candidate, Ian Arthur, opted not to run again, and his departure from the race may be affecting their ability to be competitive here. We'll see. Okay, let's do another one. Polly's tight races. Hamilton, East Stony Creek. This is one of the most fascinating races in the whole province.
Okay.
And let me do a full disclosure here.
Okay, you're from Hamilton.
And he's my cousin.
Oh, really?
So
that's why it's the most interesting.
Well, it's also the most interesting because he's the official NDP candidate. He was the NDP member since 2007 and got kicked out. He's a former Hamilton Tiger Cat, so he's very well known. And he's a current Hamilton City Councillor, so he's very well known. This could be the best 4-way fight in the whole province tonight. That's my projection.
Okay, well,
and I'm not Polly. I'm just a Hamiltonian.
In Hamilton, this one is, we saw a lot of talk about the cuts to autism, and that's what's taking votes away from the PCs, cuts to education, healthcare, those types of things. The NDP is the other strong horse in this one that Polly sees.
Always has been a traditional NDP riding. The question of whether Paul Miller's running as an independent will take votes away from Zagam, but split the vote, allowing one of these two to win.
Yes.
Or maybe him. Who knows?
Who knows? We'll have to watch that. Yeah. That's interesting.
One more. Let's keep going here. Polly's tight races. Sudbury.
Sudbury.
How come?
So Sudbury, this one is between the NDP and the PCs. Sudbury, this is a lot of talk about long-term care and the privatization of long-term care, feelings that the PCs are allowing their friends to own private long-term care homes. We've seen a lot of that discussion there. So Now, on the PC side, people like the Doug Ford's position on the economy, building, that sort of thing. It's, you know, very strong PC following there, but with people, a lot of people upset about long-term care that might go to the NDP.
Jamie West had the seat in the previous House. That's why the star is beside his name. Aaron, stick around. We'll check back with you as the evening goes. That's Aaron Kelly from Advanced Symbolics Inc. Now we head back over to the desk here and say hello once again to our friends, Janet Ecker and Dwight Duncan over here, Sherry and Hannah over here, and we're going to check in with the leaders, shall we? Control room, let's bring up the, because we're starting to see returns coming in already. The Progressive Conservatives, as you can see in that right-hand column, leading and elected already in 20 MPPs tonight. The New Democrats in second place with 5, Liberals in third with 3, and that one Green, I'm guessing, is Mike Schreiner, but we shall see. In the riding of Etobicoke North, Doug Ford, no returns in yet, but he's expected to take that seat handily for the PCs tonight. Let's continue to look at the party leaders across Ontario. The official opposition leader in the last House was Andrea Horwath. No returns in yet. You can see all the zeros across the board. But Andrea Horwath, widely expected to return to Queen's Park, at least as an MPP in the next legislative sitting. Let's continue the next one, and we're really going to be watching this one carefully all night long. And these numbers tell a big tale. Michael Tibolo, the cabinet minister in the last Legislative Assembly with 894 votes. Stephen Del Duca, the former member in that riding before Tibolo had it, and the leader of the Liberal Party, is already down by a 2-to-1 margin. Now, we're not going to get too excited here. This is 5% of polls reporting, and you don't know what part of the riding they're reporting from. What I think we definitely know is that this is going to be a 2-horse race all night long. And Dwight, I guess I've got to ask you, I know it's early, but you can't like those numbers.
At 5%, I'm not too concerned, and there are strong pockets of Liberal support traditionally in that riding and Conservative support. It's premature, but we'll have to wait and see.
Definitely.
It's a little early.
Can we get one more leader in here, please? Let's see Mike Schreiner's numbers in the riding of Guelph. We well remember Mike Schreiner ran 3 times before he finally hit touchdown in the last election 4 years ago, and he is out to, again, 6% of the polls reporting, but it would be, I don't know, Hannah, it'd be a shock if he lost this riding right after the breakthrough last time.
Mike is just such a likable guy that I don't see him going anywhere anytime soon. He's just genuine and he cares about people, and that shows in his politics.
He is off to almost a 3-to-1 margin lead already, again, with 6% of the polls reporting. Okay, where are we going to go to next? Hillary Clark is in my ear for the evening, and Hillary usually tells me what she wants to see next. What are we thinking, Hillary? Where should we go now? How about the 905? Shall we check and see what the 905 is doing tonight? You want to do Peterborough? All right, we'll do Peterborough first. Go ahead, let's bring those up. Look at the right-hand column, incidentally, everybody. 33 Tories. They're halfway to a majority government right now. Okay, Peterborough-Kawartha. Remember, we just talked about this with Aaron Kelly. This is the biggest bellwether riding in the province. The question is it still a bellwether, right? This is the riding where the people always vote for the winning party. And Dave Smith, look how close that fight is with the NDP and with the Liberals. Tight 3-way fight, 5% of the polls reporting, so we're going to be a long way away from calling this one all night long. This could be a seesaw battle all evening long. Okay. That is really close. Let's try the riding of Peel, just west of here. This is a really important part of the province because as Peel goes, often so goes the province, and you can see all those blue splotches to the west of the 416. Never mind the rest of the stuff. You got 3 NDP seats up at the top there, and then all the rest of it went blue. The Liberals got shut out. 6 Mississauga seats, 5 Brampton seats. That's what's happening in Peel. Then you got York Region on top of the 416, all blue last time. Then you got Durham Region in the east, all blue with one exception, Jennifer French and Oshawa. So that's the story. Tonight, leading and elected, there does not appear to be a great change in the 905, and maybe because it's happening in places like Brampton Centre, where Sherry, the deputy leader of the NDP right now, is in a battle for her life for re-election. Only 2% of the polls reporting, but she's trailing already.
Yeah, I mean, the 905 is decisive in this province, so it will be very interesting to see as those numbers roll out, for sure.
Just before we talk about East, in Brampton Centre, Sarah Singh won by 89 votes last time. 89 votes. So it was always going to be tough for her to retain that seat. There's a name that will look familiar, Guratan Singh, because he is the brother of Jagmeet Singh, who is the federal NDP leader. This is Brampton East. Once again, it was part of the big Brampton breakthrough that the NDP experienced 4 years ago. Will they be able to maintain it tonight? We shall see. Nothing to report so far. Again, though, we're keeping our eyes very close on the right-hand part of your screen, where the Tories are leading and elected in 46 ridings already. The NDP holding on to, for the moment, official opposition status with 18 seats, and the Liberals in third place with 7, and that one green is Mike Schreiner. Okay, let's keep going. What else you want to take a look at in Peel? Brampton North. Now, this was a seat that was won by the NDP by only a few hundred votes 4 years ago, and we see the NDP in third place. Again, only 6% of the polls reporting. Again, Sherry, I don't want to make any vast conclusions this early in the evening, but your party has put such a full court press into Brampton, visiting numerous times and trying to really penetrate Brampton, and it looks like it hasn't paid off, or it looks like it's not paying off.
Well, I think more on the positive side, it looks, for the PCs, it looks like the PCs are having their night. And it looks like Doug Ford, as a leader, is having his night. And I think that's what's happening here.
The Progressive Conservatives are, shall we just say at this point, well on their way to achieving the majority government that they wanted coming in. They're still a little bit short, 46 seats, 63 gets you a majority. NDP in second with 18, and the Liberals with 7, which is a number which will look familiar because that's what they had at the end of the night 4 years ago. Okay, can we go back to the 905 and check out some more ridings there? Because this is often where elections are won and lost. In Brampton South, Prabmeet Sakaria, who's the former sitting member in the last legislature, running against the Liberals' Marilyn Rayfield. Janet, Prabmeet was the president of the Treasury Board in the last House, and looks like he's, again, 10% of the polls reporting, but given the trends, looks like he's going back.
It does, and he's been, I think, one of the up-and-comers that it'll be interesting to see how he proceeds if he does indeed become a member of the government. But he had a very, very strong performance at Treasury Board.
Let's continue to look at votes in Peel Region of Brampton West. Again, the asterisk beside Amarjot Sandhu's name means he represented this riding in the last Legislative Assembly. We have no returns yet to show in Brampton West. Leading and electeds, the PCs, they're now 10 away from a majority government. Let's keep going. In the riding of Peel, in Mississauga Centre, this is Natalie Kuzendova, who I got to take my hat off to her. She is a nurse, and when COVID was out of control, she took off her MPP's hat and she put on her nurse's hat and she went and pulled some shifts in the ER. And she did her job to help people at that time. She's the former sitting member. And again, with early returns in the riding appeal, she looks like she is on her way to returning to Queen's Park. Let's keep looking and see what else is going on. This is Mississauga East Cooksville. No returns to speak of there. But Dwight, was Duca in the House when you were in the House?
Yes, she was. My last term, yeah.
She was a Liberal MPP. She lost. She ran for municipal council in Mississauga. She won. And now, for some inexplicable reason, she wants to go back to Queen's Park, and she's trying. No returns in yet, but you'd have to say the trends are certainly not in her favor tonight.
She also worked for Sandra Pupatello, as I recall. Yeah. So she's been a long time in Queen's Park.
Mississauga, Erin Mills. Once again, we're going to say the same story here. This is the Conservative former sitting member, Sabawi, off to an early start, an early lead over the Liberals' Imran Mian. And again, we'll watch, but it looks like a certain trend is picking up over the 905. That one's in Mississauga, Erin Mills. Let's keep looking. Where are we going to go to next? Mississauga Lakeshore. No returns in, but again, on the basis of what you've seen so far tonight, you got to believe that Rudy Cozzetto's in pretty good to return there. He is, I'm going to get this wrong, he's Patrick Brown's cousin or uncle or something like that.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
He's related to Patrick Brown's mother's side, which is the Tasconas, the Italian side of the Brown family. So he's part of the family. Anyway, no returns there yet, but again, if things are going the way they're going, we could anticipate that the Conservatives will hang on to Lakeshore. In Mississauga Malton, You're seeing the theme here, folks. You're seeing it all night long. Mississauga Malton, Deepak Anand in the lead again in that 905 riding. The 905 really does vote. I mean, you represented one of those ridings, Janet. There seems to be something about voting en masse for the winners, right? They decide elections in the 905.
Yeah, they certainly do. They certainly do. But I think the Premier's message about getting it done, his message that was both focused on transit and highways, infrastructure, more hospitals, more schools, all of that in the 905, growing communities, families, seniors, et cetera. So the messages were really resonating out there, I think, during the campaign, and this may well be proving the case. We'll see as the night rolls on.
Let's check in on the ridings that you folks all sort of gave us the heads up on earlier. You said these are the ridings to watch. So let's bring up Janet Ecker's ridings as we continue our coverage here on TVO of Election Night 2022. Don Valley West. Ooh. Oh, my goodness. Look at what a squeaker this is going to be all night long. 39% of the polls reporting. The NDP is clearly not going to be the factor that Irwin Elman hoped. But, I mean, there's 1,000 votes. Excuse me, there's 100 votes right now between Mark Saunders and Stephanie Bowman. That is going to be tight. Well, there's your leader, Hannah. There's Mike Schreiner.
Cute.
With wife and 2 kids. Watching the returns from presumably somewhere in Guelph. And he can be, I guess, happy with the news that he's still got a job after tonight. He's going to go back to Queen's Park as the MPP for Guelph. Okay, Sheldon, thanks for those shots. Let's get back to some returns now and find out what Janet Ecker's second choice of seat is. And look at that. In York South-Weston, which just never votes Tory, the Ford brand is strong.
Yeah, and a good, strong candidate who worked very hard. So
we don't have a check mark there yet, but with 15% of the polls reporting, we're going to look, we should start to take note because we're going to start to see some of these ridings called awfully soon. Michael Ford running next door to the constituency that he represented at City Hall. Faisal Hassan looks like he's on his way to being a one-term New Democrat MPP with the Premier's nephew going to be joining him at Queen's Park, but we'll see. 15% of the polls reporting so far, so we're not going to get out ahead of ourselves here. All right, let's go on to Sherry DeNovo's ridings. She said Toronto Centre was one to watch. Sherry, your friend Kristen Wongtam's out to a lead, but it's only 300 votes, and it's early.
Yeah, and it's still a fight, but here's hoping, here's hoping.
I see just below that in Parkdale High Park, Butila Carpoche's got a 2-to-1 lead over her Liberal challenger.
As predicted.
Why don't we bring that one up as well so we can take a longer look at that one. Waterloo was the other one you wanted to look at, and Catherine Fife is off to a good early lead for the NDP in Waterloo.
Yeah. Again, very positive. Happy about that.
I'm presuming you're very encouraged by that. Yes, indeed. All right, let's go to Dwight Duncan's seats, and we'll take a look at the 2 seats that he thought were going to be extremely competitive this evening. One a Liberal-Tory fight, one a Liberal-New Democrat fight. Oh. Sorry, Dwight, we got nothing to show you but zeros. Nothing but zeros so far, but that's the race we're going to watch in Oakville. And look at this race in Ottawa Centre. Holy smokes. NDP. Joel Harden apparently really... there was always a question of whether or not that was a Liberal riding or whether it happened to be a Yasser Naqvi riding. And the NDP won it last time. They hadn't won it before that since, I guess, Evelyn Gigantis back in the 1970s and 80s. But look at this. This is a huge lead. Admittedly, 15% of the polls reporting only, but that's a big lead.
It is. It's going to be hard
to catch up.
To catch up at this
point. And a terrific candidate, I have to say, and Joel. Yeah.
Joel's a good candidate, you say?
Excellent candidate, yeah.
And our candidate's quite good, too.
All right, let's go to, shall we take a look at the 2 Green candidates and see how they're doing? Let's go to Parry Sound Muskoka, because if the Greens are going to make that second breakthrough tonight, that's the place where we presume it's going to happen. Let's get some returns from Parry Sound Muskoka, and we'll see if Matt Richter, we got nothing. Nothing but goose eggs. Okay.
This is a good one to watch.
Going to have to wait a little longer. Isn't that funny? There's two New Democrats named Horwath running tonight. Let me bring everybody's attention to the right-hand column. The Conservatives are now leading and elected in 64 seats. That's a majority government, ladies and gentlemen. They haven't won all those seats yet, but they're leading and elected in 64. So that puts them over the top.
I would add that at this point, total votes, the Tories are at 40% plus.
You know what?
It's only about 6%, 7%.
I'm going to jump in here because I think obviously the numbers are trending in such a way that we can say with confidence at this stage of the evening that the decision desk here declares a progressive conservative based on the returns that are in. It's 9:23 p.m. and I'm betting that most folks could have called this thing 10 or 15 minutes ago, but there we go. Doug Ford, 26th Premier of the province of Ontario, will go back to Queen's Park as the leader of a second consecutive majority government. Janet, everything worked for the PCs in this campaign, and the results now show it.
It would appear to. Yes, they ran a very strong campaign. I mean, it was very focused. The Premier was very disciplined. And I think one of the other things, though, is I think what you're seeing in him is a man who came into the provincial government with not as much preparation or experience in provincial politics as most provincial leaders have had over the years, but he learned. And he grew. And to me, that's always been the most important thing about political leaders is can they do that? And he certainly did. And so while the campaign team deserves a lot of credit, I don't think it was just them keeping him on the leash, as we said earlier. I think he also was disciplined and knew that he had to focus. But the other message I think about it, that the building theme was very consistent with what people had seen him trying to do for the previous couple of years, right? So it resonated, and I think it made some sense.
You want to? Can we do the 413 ridings, the 413? You know, Doug Ford obviously was doing a lot of events in this election campaign with a lot of guys in hard hats behind him. Because he wants to build Highway 413 across the top of Toronto. And let's look at the ridings where the 413 would go. Dufferin-Caledon strongly coming back for Sylvia Jones, although Hannah, look who's in second.
Green show.
Laura Campbell in second place in Dufferin-Caledon.
Very exciting.
Let's keep looking. Along the 413, the proposed highway, which the three other parties opposed, in King Vaughan, Stephen Lecce will return to Queen's Park, the Minister of Education winning personal election in King Vaughan. Where else along the 413 are we going to look? Vaughan Woodbridge. A very tough night for Stephen Del Duca. It looks like he will go down to defeat and not be able to win his seat back that he held from 2012 to 2016. Michael Tobolo, Cabinet Minister, looking like he's well on his way to returning to Queen's Park. 16% of the polls reporting there. Again, along the route of the 413 in Brampton East, this would be a loss for the NDP if these numbers hold up. Hardeep Grewal with an early lead over Guratan Singh in Brampton East. Continuing our look along the 413. Are these ridings all Tory? It looks like they are. Amarjot Sandhu with a strong lead, 2-1 over his Liberal challenger. Let's keep looking along the 413 path. Brampton South. Prabmeet Sarkaria, President of the Treasury Board in the last Legislative Assembly. It looks like he's going back to Queen's Park, a third of the polls reporting. And here's Ted Arnott. We could have put a check mark beside this before the night even started. That's one of the safest Tory seats anywhere in the province. In Wellington, Halton Hills, the Speaker of the Legislature is going back to Queen's Park, at least as an MPP, and I'm sure they'll have another vote and probably make him the Speaker again. Yeah. Only 14% of the polls reporting, but he's back.
Yeah, one of the things that was kind of intriguing during the campaign was Mr. Del Duca's focus on being against 413, because the polling, certainly that the Conservatives had seen on it, was that in the 905 particularly, it was about 3-1 in favour, about 2-1 in favour across the province. It slipped a bit because of the criticism that happened, but there was some interest in why, given that he, made that such a focal point of his campaign when so many people really, really wanted to have that highway construction.
One of the things that we wanted to refer to tonight is if the Liberals were going to make a comeback, here are the seats they were going to have to do well in, taking many of them away from the NDP. So let's bring up that theme if we can and see how the Liberals did in these seats. Can red take back orange is the theme here. And in Beaches, East York, interestingly enough, as Liberals are having a miserable night across the province, this would be a pickup for the Liberals if this works. Dwight, Mary Margaret McMahon, 3M, the former Toronto City Councillor, with an early lead, half the polls reporting. You couldn't call this yet. It's only a 400-vote lead, 300 votes. But that's encouraging for the Liberals in the East End of Toronto.
There's going to be a number of seats we pick up, and we've got 10% of the vote in so far, and it's interesting to see this. Obviously, it's not going as well as we'd like. Doug Ford deserves enormous credit. He got off, I think Janet said, with less experience. I thought his first year was a disaster. He made some tough choices then. surrounded himself with some very good people, such that by the time we got into this election, most people have been certain he'd get his majority back. But we're still a long way in terms of the NDP Liberal piece. I'll be curious to see if the Tories hit 80 seats. That's kind of where in my mind I thought they would be at. And like I say, we're going to have to wait for some of the more of the downtown Toronto area.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of those, because the NDP won Beaches East York 4 years ago by 9,000 votes. They're neck and neck right now. In Brampton Centre, this is a riding that Sarah Singh only won by 89 votes last time. She looks like she's in difficulty with half the polls reporting to take that seat. That one looks like she's going to lose. That's Can Red Take Back Orange? No, not there. Let's keep going. Can we do any more Can Red Take Back Orange? Not there either. The Conservatives, obviously running on a 905 wave here, picking up a seat that was New Democrat last time, albeit only by about 400 votes last time. Let's keep going on this theme here. Where are we going next? Can Red Take Back Orange? Not there. Wow. Boy, look at the sweep in Davenport. Okay, that's your old riding. What do you think?
I do have to say that Marit is a very strong candidate. When I was helping with the 2018 Green campaign, I was lucky enough to see her at a lot of events. And as I ride my bike through the riding, I see her face all over the place. And so I know that she is a great representative for the NDPs. And I'm happy to see her win her seat again.
And Marit was the education critic in a year or two or four where education was primary in people's minds, particularly with the effect of the pandemic. So Marit's done a bang-up job, done very well with the press and media, and really made that her own. So I'm happy to see her get reelected. That's exciting.
She'll be a leadership contender after tonight, won't she?
She very well might be.
Yeah. In the riding of Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas, or as we call it in the Hammer, HWAD. Sandy Shaw, who is the former sitting member, is hanging on. About an 800-vote lead with 22% of the polls reporting. So that's a riding that the NDP was really surprised to win last time, and so far anyway, appears to be holding on to it. Can Red take back Orange? Nope, not tonight. Let's keep looking at this theme. See what else we got. Can Red take back Orange? Not in Humber River, Black Creek. Not yet, anyway, but look how close that is. 100 votes difference between the former sitting member for the NDP and Ida Lapredi, who's the Liberal challenger. 40% of the polls reporting, so we're a long way from calling that one. Let's keep looking. Can Red take back Orange? In Kingston? Maybe yes. Ted Hsu, the former member of the federal parliament for the Liberals in Kingston of the Islands, decided he'd had enough of that, decided to run provincially. This was a New Democrat seat in the last legislature. Ian Arthur opted not to run again. It's a, 2,300 vote lead there for the Liberals over the NDP. So that one's too early to call, I would suggest. Let's keep going. Can Red take back Orange? Not in Kitchener Centre, not yet. 2,200 vote margin right now for Laura May Lindo. Everybody remember her uncle? Who's her uncle? Alvin Curling.
Oh,
Alvin Curling, former speaker, former Liberal cabinet minister.
Quite the family theme going on here tonight.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Uncle and nephew in Kitchener Centre, and uncle and nephew in York Southwestern for the Fords.
This is particularly disappointing because, as we said earlier, this was the one riding the Liberals appeared to be competitive in, and with 38% of the vote in, that's simply not the case.
Yeah.
Dwight, I got to get a comment from you on that right-hand column, and then I'm going to send it up to JMM and NAM to get their take on things. Sometimes you don't get rewarded in politics, as I don't have to tell anybody around this table. Stephen Del Duca had some good days on the hustings, and he looks at those numbers tonight, and he sees that despite the fact we got to get the total vote up here at some point so we can see what that looks like. But at the moment, 10 seats. It's better than 7, but it's a long way from official opposition status. What are you thinking right now?
Well, we're up around 15% of the vote in. It appears as though the NDP are holding firm against the Liberals, not so much against the Conservatives, but that may be enough for them to hold on to official opposition status. I note at this point they're in the lead in actual vote, total vote. It's very close, but we're starting to see enough votes come in now that it's hard to know, how the Liberals can make up that 26-10 difference, and we'll just have to wait and see. There are going to be a lot of cliffhangers, I think, enough cliffhangers that it could make a difference, but it's not so far it's not been a good night for the Liberals.
Can we get a total vote graphic just before we go upstairs? You guys got that handy? We want to see how, we always want to compare how things are tonight versus last time. 4 years ago, Doug Ford got 40% of the total votes cast in the province. Tonight, he's got a third so far? No, what does this mean? Total vote change. Okay. Tories have got 1 million votes so far. New Democrats are second in the total vote count with 830,000. The Liberals are third with 659,000, barely ahead of the Greens at this point.
Hey.
Look at that. Barely ahead of the Greens.
Very exciting for the Greens.
That's really something.
Yeah.
Okay.
We expected that to be getting like a larger vote share this year for sure. Yeah. And I think that will just continue. So it's exciting to see. I think that, the future is green, whether we like it or not. So I'm proud of our party for the representation that's coming out and voting with their hearts, not strategically.
In Schreiner, this was the first time he was in the all-candidates debate, right?
Yes, it was.
So people actually got to see him in a way that they hadn't before, and he performed extremely well.
Yeah.
Let's go upstairs. John Michael McGrath and Nam Kiwanuka, why don't you take it away and give us some of your reflections on the evening so far?
Hey, thanks so much, Steve. Speaking of cliffhangers, there seems to be a lot of storylines happening tonight. We've looked at the results of the 905, the Northwest and Southwest. A big story coming out of the Northeast.
Right. Gilles Bisson, the NDP House Leader in the last legislature, pardon me, he was not the House Leader when the legislature dissolved, but in Timmins, that seat looks like it's going to go for the Progressive Conservatives. George Peary, the mayor of Timmins, was running for the PCs there. Bisson has been a fixture for the party. He was the House Leader for an extended period, a real pillar of the caucus. So his defeat there seems a shock to the NDP caucus, I'm sure. Meanwhile, in the riding of Nickelbelt, France Gélinas, I believe, is still leading there. So still some success for the NDP in the Northeast. That result in Timmins is a bit of a surprise. We've also got ridings that we're going to be keeping an eye on, like Sault Ste. Marie was a very interesting riding as we walked into this campaign with Ross Romano, who had narrowly won the riding back in 2018. Was he going to be able to hold on? Of course, the Progressive Conservative government made a very large investment in Algoma Steel, and that's very popular. Algoma Steel, one of the largest employers in the area. So I believe he seems to be hanging on there. We'll keep an eye on other ridings in the Northeast as well.
Yeah, he's definitely, it seems like he is leading. Something that's not very surprising is Mr. Schreiner is doing very well for the Greens. And speaking of the Greens, what does it look like for them in Parry Sound, Muskoka?
Well, obviously, the Greens have put a ton of effort into Parry Sound, Muskoka. We've talked about that throughout this campaign. And there we have it, still very, very close, 56% of the polls reporting, and Graydon Smith, the mayor of Bracebridge, and Matt Richter, about 12,000 and a change in terms of votes each. Still very close. Richter might be able to come from behind, but there's going to be a lot of heartbreak for the Greens if Richter ends up not closing the deal this time around.
I know they're still counting the votes, but when you look at that number, I think it's separated by 400 votes. So that shows the importance of everybody voting. No?
Right, and it also, I think, proves at least the theory of what the Greens were saying in this campaign, that this was a winnable seat for them. That if they put the work in, and I mean, I joked with Mike Schreiner earlier that it had really become the Mike and Matt show in the last few weeks of the campaign. They were in Parry Sound, Muskoka multiple times in the closing days of this campaign, but it was was really one of the only seats in the province that really held a lot of promise to, double their caucus from 1 to 2.
Something that I'm finding really surprising, as Steve mentioned it, with Liberal leader Del Duca, I think a lot of people maybe assumed that he would be forming opposition, but it doesn't look very good. What happens if he doesn't get his seat in the riding of Vaughan Woodbridge?
Well, it's going to depend on what the Liberal seat count is at the end of the night. If it's really bad for the Liberals at the end of the night, he may not get a chance to ask a Liberal member to step aside. He may simply depart as Liberal leader. If those numbers come up a bit more, maybe Stephen Del Duca asks a Liberal who did win their seat, preferably in a safe Liberal riding, to step aside so that he can lead the party from inside the chamber, something he hasn't been able to do in the 2 years since he became leader.
And how do you do that when everybody's been working so hard and say...
I mean, that's heartbreaking, right? So, some poor Liberal MPP who's, just been elected gets the call from the leader's office saying, hey, sorry, we need you to step aside.
And then the people who voted for that person, right?
Yes, they would get a chance to decide whether they wanted Stephen Del Duca to represent them in the legislature as well. And sometimes they lose, right? John Tory had that really painful experience happen when he did not win his seat in 2007 and then ran again and lost, and that paved the way for his exit from provincial politics.
So many storylines. John Michael, you're going to be joining Steve momentarily, but now I'm going to send it back to Steve.
Okay, Nan, thanks very much. Thanks, John Michael. Before we go to the next series of graphics, order, says Mr. Speaker. How about this? The Attorney General is trailing to former Barrie Mayor Jeff Lehman. This is Doug Downey trailing to Jeff Lehman in BOSM. What's that again? Barrie Oro Medante Springwater, something like that. 24 votes. 24 votes. That is really close.
Yes.
But I want a word about Gilles Bisson, who's been at that legislature representing Timmins since 1990, and he lost tonight.
I know, and very sad, but, what an incredible career. I mean, he's been through so many administrations. He's hung in there. He's been House Leader multiple times, leadership contender. So I think, really all partisanship aside, you just have to recognize that kind of service and dedication for what it is. So really sad to see that he's lost his seat, and I think it left an incredible legacy of strong leadership behind him.
I got to deal with him when he was NDP House Leader, and I was government House Leader and Opposition House Leader. Jill's one of the finest public servants I've ever known, and he's had health issues this year as well.
He had a heart attack before the campaign started.
Politics is a cruel mistress, and, I'm sad for Jill, sad for Ontario, but there's a very happy Conservative guy up there right now, and he deserves a lot of credit, and it's going to be a very good night, obviously, for the Conservatives.
All right, let's take a look at another, incidentally, leading and elected the Tories right now in 78 ridings. They had 76 4 years ago on June the 7th. 78. They're beyond that, and we're not done. We're calling this next theme Controversial Conservatives because we had a really unusual situation in the last Legislative Assembly. I can't recall a time when more Tories got booted out of their caucus for all sorts of cockamamie and crazy reasons than happened in the last House. I think there were 6 or 7 of them that got the boot.
If I can say,
go ahead.
That is one of the reasons Doug Ford is winning tonight. Mike Harris kept the Reform Party out of Ontario in 1995. He isolated the more extreme elements in his party and can, I think, lay claim to have taken the center of Ontario politics.
Well, let's take a look. Okay, Sheldon, let's bring these graphics up. We're going to take a look at the ridings of these formerly controversial Conservatives. Now, Jim Wilson represented this riding in Simcoe Grey from 1990. He was kicked out of the caucus. He opted not to run again. It's a reliably safe Conservative seat, and the Collingwood Mayor Brian Saunderson is going to represent this area at Queen's Park next time. How about some other PC problematic ridings? This is Glengarry, Prescott, Russell. Amanda Simard got elected 4 years ago as a progressive Conservative. She didn't like that party's policy on Francophone affairs, so she quit the caucus, sat as an independent, eventually joined the Liberals, is running again for the Liberals tonight, but we can see she's about, 600 votes behind her Conservative challenger right now. Only 12% of the polls reporting, so we're not going to call that one yet. How about some other PC problematic ridings? This is Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston. Does the name Randy Hillier ring a bell? As the Premier calls him, there's a guy for whom the cheese has slipped off the cracker. And Mr. Hillier decided not to run again. He had some very interesting things to say about vaccinations and the trucker convoy. He stood down. John Jordan running for the Conservatives this time, and he looks like he is well on his way to keeping this seat in the blue column. How about some other PC problematic ridings? Where else are we going? Cambridge. Okay, this is, now it's interesting, the new blue party's in fourth there. Belinda Carahalios was elected as a Conservative 4 years ago, had some, offside things, I guess, from a PC point of view to say about the lockdown policy. Was kicked out of the caucus for doing so. She and her husband Jim decided to create the new blue party, and they are in fourth place tonight, ahead of the Greens. She's obviously not going to win her seat back. She'll be a one-term MPP, but the seat will stay in Progressive Conservative hands this evening. Other PC problematic. York Centre. Roman Baber was elected 4 years ago. This was his seat. He was, again, offside with his party on the issue of vaccinations and lockdowns. As a result, he's now fighting for the leadership of the federal Conservative Party. The Liberals thought they had a winner, and Shelley Brown nominated there. Too early to call, with only a little over a third of the polls reporting. But Michael Kersner has an early lead of about 1,300 votes in York Centre. Chatham, Kent, Leamington. Well, now that's interesting. Rick Nichols was the former sitting member there, had represented that area for quite a patch, refused to get vaccinated. Ford kicked him out of caucus. He decided, I'm going to run for this new Ontario party. He is, and he's in third place. So he's kept, at least so far, 2,320 loyal people to him who otherwise perhaps would have voted Conservative. But it looks pretty clear that Trevor Jones is going to keep that seat in the blue column this evening. We can be putting check marks beside all of these guys.
Oh, good.
As can we in Durham. Tell us about Todd McCarthy. Was he was former law partner with Jim Flaherty,
yes,
wasn't he?
Yes, he was, and he's run for the Conservatives federally and provincially, and he really, really wants to be a public servant. And I am so glad, because he's an excellent candidate. He runs fabulous campaigns. I am so glad that he looks like he's winning this seat, because he deserves it, and he'll be very good.
Now, this was Lindsay Park's seat in the last legislature, and she, again, had some communication issues with the government of Ontario, with the Premier's office. She said she had a medical exemption not to be vaccinated. They weren't completely sold on that. Kicked her out of caucus as well. McCarthy moved in there and looks like he's going to win the seat. And Dwight, that's Granville Anderson, who had the seat for many years for the Liberals, then got elected to municipal council, again trying to come back provincially, and is going to fall short tonight. I think we got maybe one or two more in this PC problematic riding. Here's Ajax. Okay, Janet, you know this area of the province. This one's tight.
It is.
This is Rod Phillips' old seat.
Yeah.
And Rod Phillips, we know, had some kind of huge fight with the Premier's office 6 months ago, because he just up and quit, as opposed to just not standing again. And here we go. The Conservatives and the Liberals are only about 1,500 votes apart. So this one's a long way from being called, even though 80% of the polls reporting. Is that closer than you thought it would be, Janet?
No, they knew they were in a really tough fight, actually, and they were really pulling out all the stops to get the vote out. They knew that, I mean, Amber is a former leader of one of the teacher unions in the area, so of course she got a lot of teacher support. Patrice is on the school board, a two-time school board trustee, and a first time running provincially. So they did a good campaign. She's been very, very good, very strong for someone who hadn't done it before. But they knew it would be close. And one of the things that'll be interesting is whether the fourth parties, the Ontario Party, the New Blue Party, whether they pulled some of the vote that might have gone to Patrice. We'll see, because there were folks in that riding that were pushing back on that.
Let's do one more PC problematic ridings. I think we got one more. Hold'em in Norfolk, right. And
well,
can that be right? That can't be right.
Whoa.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Guys, you gotta check that. This is, well, here's why I'm asking. Toby Barrett represented this riding for a very long time, I think 3 decades. And he decided that he was going to retire and not run again. And then the Conservatives and he had a difference of opinion as to who ought to be the next candidate there.
Yeah. That's his former assistant, though, I think, and he was campaigning for that assistant, much to the irritation of the rest of the caucus and the campaign
let's bring it up again.
So maybe it's actually it's actually working.
Let's bring it up again, because that would be fascinating if that happened, because
Yes,
that's to say one of the safest Conservative seats in the province, may not go Conservative tonight because the people there were more loyal to Toby Barrett and don't like the way he was screwed over by the Premier's office. How about that?
That would be one, 9,000.
Yeah,
No, it's amazing.
It says 9,000.
Bobby Ann Brady.
There will be another party sitting at Queen's Park.
Wow.
Now, she's an independent, though. She ran as an independent.
Did she?
Yeah. She didn't run for any particular party.
Okay. Didn't say so on the screen, so that's
Yeah, it just said OTH for other.
Yeah.
Okay. I am led to believe that the leader of the Green Party is about to begin speaking to give his, I guess it's a concession speech. It would be great if we could get the Parry Sound Muskoka numbers up here, just to see whether or not Mike Schreiner can say, thank you, Guelph, for putting me back in, and we're really close to getting a second guy to keep me company down there at Queen's Park. Let's see if that's the case. See if we can get Parry Sound Muskoka up there. Okay. What's the difference there?
It's still close.
It's really close.
It's still
700 votes.
Yeah.
What's that line you said, Sherry? It's not the...
It's not the despair that gets you, it's the hope.
And Matt Richter's hopes. Look how close he is. Look how close he is.
Yeah.
Well,
That's 73% of the polls reporting, so not nearly enough to call that yet. But you got to like that. I mean, he's close. He's close. In one of the safest Tory seats in the province.
Yeah, every seat counts, and it just gives me hope for the Greens in general. That's exciting to see. I think that maybe it's not this election, maybe elections in the future, but the tide is changing, and I'm really proud of what we've done in the province.
Let's take a look at the bellwether riding, which has reliably voted for the winning party since 1977. And what's happening in Peterborough-Kawartha tonight? There you go. The folks in Peterborough-Kawartha know what they're doing. They seem to be able to pick the winner every time.
Yeah.
And Dave Smith will be going back to Queen's Park. He's the former sitting member. He's going to get his job back. In the end, wasn't that close. He's got a decent-sized lead over the Liberal challenger, Greg Dempsey. So there we go. Take a look at the right-hand column. The Progressive Conservatives won 76 seats 4 years ago this week. They're up to 80 now. The NDP clearly are going to be the official opposition this time, as they were last time. Now, they won 40 seats 4 years ago. They're down to 28. So they sustained some losses. And I guess one of the stories that we're going to have to look for, and I put this note to the control room, they didn't lose them to the Liberals. They lost them to the Conservatives. Ridings went from NDP to Tory.
Yeah, that's what I was speaking about when I cited my own old riding and the whole Essex. I haven't looked at Essex County, but it was clear that the Conservatives, Ford has made inroads into old urban industrial areas like Windsor, Hamilton, Thunder Bay. I see we've lost, I don't know if it's the NDP or the Conservatives. Looks like we're going to lose Mike Gravel's old seat.
Thunder Bay, Atikokan. No, he's Superior North.
Yeah.
Superior North.
And you know, it's very clear that Doug Ford has been able to put together a coalition that's very different from the old Conservative coalition. He occupies the center space in Ontario politics today, and he and his team deserve enormous credit. It's going to be a long night for my former colleagues and I.
Well, and I think having 8 of the private sector unions endorsing Ford, like publicly endorsing, and then going out and knocking on doors for him. I mean, even Premier Davis didn't have that kind of union support at his heyday, right? So it is an incredible alignment, and it's something that I think the Premier and Labour Minister Monty McNaughton really, really worked at. I mean, it was strategic, it was focused, and they created results.
For years,
And
we had that support.
And also, what we're seeing is the centre dropping out.
Yeah.
We're seeing a left-right split, which is very indicative of worldwide politics. We look at the UK with Labour and Conservatives. We're looking at that, and perhaps, you know, leadership, really, with Del Duca. Problematic, but I mean, again, what's the difference between the NDP and the Liberal Party? Well, clearly, the population of Ontario sees the NDP as an official opposition.
I think one of the things, though, it's not so much left versus right as it was pocketbook issues that people cared about. I mean, jobs and affordability and you know, and the building theme, I think, really resonated. So I mean, that I think, you know, and that wasn't a left-right thing, but I think it really resonated with people. But the other thing is, I think the
You know what, Jan?
Yeah,
Forgive me, I'm going to jump in here
Okay.
because
Yes,
the leader
here's
of the
Mike.
Green Party,
Here.
Mike
Okay.
Schreiner, is the first to speak. We're now going to see a series of speeches, starting with Mike Schreiner. Stephen Del Duca will speak next. People will be looking for a hint from him as to what his future plans are, given that he has only improved on Liberal fortunes by 2 seats tonight and come third in the total vote. Mike Schreiner maintains his seat in Guelph. We still don't know what's happening in Parry Sound Muskoka. That one's still too close to call. The PCs were leading by a few hundred votes. Let's now listen to the leader of the Green Party, Mike Schreiner.
Thank you, Guelph. Thank you, Guelph, so much. I want to say to everyone across this province, those of you who stood up and put yourself out there to be a candidate, thank you for doing that. Our democracy is better because of your service. Four years ago, we made history in Guelph, electing Ontario's first Green MPP. And we've made history again, re-electing Ontario's first Green MPP. We are proving that Greens are here to stay. We're building momentum across this riding and across this province. And I just want to say that up the road in Parry Sound Muskoka, we have a tight race happening there as well. You know, to see a Green candidate so close in a riding that has always gone blue tells you that there is Green momentum, there is a Green wave building across this province. It's not only in Guelph, it's in ridings all across Ontario. And I want to give a shout out to Matt Richter and his team for the amazing campaign they've run. You know, the race in Parry Sound Muskoka is too close to call right now. And I just want Matt and his family, who have worked so hard, and his team, the team that's bringing people-powered change, I want you to know that we're rooting you on for the rest of this evening. All of you in Guelph have shown that we can do politics differently in this province. Yes. That we can work across party lines. Yes. That we can put people before politics, people before partisanship. That we can ensure that we're going to continue fighting so that everyone has an affordable place to call home. That we invest in the frontline healthcare workers who care for us, and that mental health is health. And that as we build connected communities, we will fight to stop the sprawl and protect the places we love. To support small businesses and ensure our communities are climate ready. And so I want to take a moment to thank Green candidates in every riding in this province, because we've seen the Green vote go up in this election. Thank you for your hard work. And the candidates from all parties and all ridings, I encourage you to stay engaged. And I say to my fellow candidates here in Guelph, let's keep working together to build the green and caring city that we love here in Guelph. We need everyone to build the caring, connected, climate-ready Ontario we need. And so I say to the people of this province and in my community, over the last 4 years, I've fought hard to be your voice. And I will fight the next 4 years to be a strong opposition voice in the legislature. To make sure the issues that Ontarians care about are talked about, to bring forward new solutions to the housing affordability crisis, to the cost of living crisis, to the mental health crisis, and to the climate emergency. And make no mistake about it, we will continue to fight and work together at Queen's Park. I will work to amplify your voices because we need change, especially when it comes to acting on the climate emergency. We cannot afford to wait. So I want to congratulate Mr. Ford and the PC party on your victory tonight. The people have spoken. The people have spoken. But at this critical moment in time, I ask you to consider the financial, the economic, and the climate implications of paving over the places we love, the farmland that feeds us, and the nature that protects us. I say this as a fellow Ontarian. The storms, floods, and extreme weather that we've experienced in the last month of this campaign alone shows us what's at stake. What's at stake for my children's future and your children's future. So I say to you, and I say to my opposition colleagues, that we have to work together to make sure this is climate ready, to make sure that our infrastructure can withstand the storms we've experienced this past month, and to make sure that our economy is ready to be successful in the emerging markets of the new climate economy. Let's work together to get that done. So I want to conclude by thanking my deputy leaders, Abhijit Mane and Beaches East York, and Diane Sachs and University Rosedale, one of my climate heroes, who put forward a climate plan that I ask all parties in the legislature to steal every idea in it, because let's build the Ontario we want. And I say to you both and to all of our candidates across the province, thank you for sharing our vision and increasing our vote total. And I want to give a quick shout out to my campaign manager here in Guelph, Diane Dance. And to Becky Smith, our provincial campaign manager, who more than anyone has built the Green Party into the party that it is today. To my family, my wife Sandy, my daughters Isabel and Beata, and my mom Barb, thank you so much for always being there for me and with me. And to all of our staff, our candidates, the volunteers, the people that power our campaigns and powered my campaign here in Guelph, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for fighting for the Ontario you want. I will work hard for you. My commitment is I will continue to work hard for you to deliver the kind of leadership we need at Queen's Park to be your voice. Merci, miigwech, and thank you.
Well, there we go. There's Mike Schreiner, who, yes, I guess he's right. He did make history tonight. He's the first Green ever re-elected at Queen's Park. So that is true. What do you think of that speech? There's your leader.
I'm always excited to hear Mike talk, and I do have to say that the way this is going, I'm kind of disappointed that we're going to be moving forward with building a bunch of highways and paving over our prime farmland. I'm going to be the one on the picket line saying, over my dead body. So I don't think we're going in the right direction.
Well, I think one of the big stories tonight, Hannah, is that the Conservatives have improved on their performance from 4 years ago, not at the expense of the Liberals, but so far it looks like at the expense of the NDP. Can we bring up some of these races, please, where Conservatives have picked up ridings that were previously held by New Democrats, which is nothing you normally think happens in this province, but there you go. Sarah Singh, we've been telling you all night long, she only won by 89 votes last time. She's in second place. She's going to lose. This is a pickup for the Conservatives in Brampton in the 905. Let's keep going here. In Brampton East, Guratan Singh, the brother of Jagmeet Singh, the federal leader. Again, there's a Conservative pickup at the expense of the New Democrats. More seats. Thunder Bay, Atikokan. All right, this was a seat that the NDP won. This was their closest win last time. 81 votes they won by last time. And while it will be close tonight, that's a Tory pickup. The Liberals had held that seat for a long time before that, but this is another sign of the strength of the Conservatives in Northern Ontario, a place that is normally a wasteland for them. In Timmins, there's another example. Tory pickup at the expense of Gilles Bisson, the MPP who'd been there since 1990. Continuing to look at the NDP seats, Essex. I mean, Terrace Natashak won that seat 2 elections ago by 12,000, and now it's the Conservatives by 9,000. Tonight. I mean, you want to talk about a change in fortunes. There it is right there. In York Southwestern, the one-term MPP Faisal Hassan will go down tonight to Michael Ford. Well, we can't call that yet. 59% of the polls reporting, but again, trends being what they are, that's certainly looking good for Michael Ford in a part of the city of Toronto where the Tories never win. That's a Liberal, New Democrat fight. The Tories look like they are on their way to victory there. In Brampton North, a riding the NDP won by about 400 votes last time, and boy, was this controversial. Kevin Yard, member of the Black community in Brampton, well, what do we say here? Didn't get his ducks in line, I guess is the nicest way to put it. Did not sign up enough new members. He was, as they say in the States, primaried by Sandeep Singh. I think the NDP was content to let it happen because they thought that if they could tap into that South Asian community there, they'd be better off. I guess not. Singh comes third tonight. And again, not a loss to the Liberals, but to the Progressive Conservatives, who are going to take all of Brampton. Here's Dwight Duncan's part of the province. In Windsor-Tecumseh, a riding once represented by Dwight Duncan. The Liberals are in third place. The New Democrats are in second. Dwight, how are the Tories in first?
Doug Ford has become the premier of working people. And I was canvassing with our candidate on the weekend. The other factor here that I will throw in, and I think this is hard to pick up in polls, I have never seen the federal Liberals more unpopular than I saw knocking on doors. And I knocked on doors in several different ridings, including my own old riding just this past Sunday. And I would stop and I would say to people, you know, what do you think? And the poll we were in was in Tecumseh. It's a poll I used to win with 60% of the vote. And like everyone was saying Conservative, and I'd say why. About half of them would just go off on Trudeau. And then the balance would like Ford and his likability.
Let's do one more riding here. Again, these are PC pickups at the expense of their Democrats. And that's Hamilton East Stony Creek. Look at that. Oski Wee Wee, Neil Lumsden, former fullback for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Neil Lumsden and John Michael, you and I talked about this riding. We thought, given the splits, given a second NDP candidate, 2 NDP candidates in the race. And let me see, can we do the math here? If you take Butt's numbers and Miller, the former sitting member for the NDP's numbers, and you add them together, it's still not quite enough to catch up to Neil Lumsden. Well, Neil was a pretty fast runner back in the day. How about that? And Jason Farr, who's on City Council, again, competitive, but not enough to help the Liberals get over the finish line here.
Just a stunning night so far in terms of how the Liberals are not performing like they would need to. You see that in Hamilton, Stony Creek, but you're seeing it all over the province. I mean, you look at these numbers and, I mean, I don't know, is it too early to start talking about Del Duca's future with the party?
Well, clearly everybody else in Liberal HQ is going to be talking about it, so at some point we're going to have to talk about it. I'm advised in my earpiece that Doug Ford is a few minutes away from talking, so we can start. Well, actually, before we talk about, you want to put his riding up? Yeah, let's put up Vaughan Woodbridge and just show everybody the lay of the land in that York Region riding. I mean, this wasn't close, folks.
Yeah. No.
This was not close.
No.
And I know for a fact that Michael Tobolo was calling personally people today saying, you've got to come up to my riding and help me pull the vote. I don't know if I'm going to win.
Yeah.
He won going away. Yeah. Won by 4,000 votes. That's a big victory. Yeah. How did Polly do tonight?
Well, she got the PC vote, right, obviously, but she's got an inverse on the NDP and the Liberals, and we were doing some analysis before we came in, and it looks like, and it'd be interesting to see what the voter turnout was. What we're seeing, the voter turnout was very low, which we expected. I think what we do have to do, though, is when the voter turnout is low, is let Polly know that that affects Liberals more than others, because Liberals are less likely to come out.
I'm going to interrupt you, forgive you, just long enough to, can we get some audio out of Etobicoke North tonight? There we go. Well, Douglas Robert Ford Jr. has won re-election for the Progressive Conservatives tonight and joins a fairly select group of Conservative premiers who've won back-to-back majorities.
Increase.
And an increased majority at that, yes indeed. 80 seats, up 4 from 4 years ago. Let's hear from Premier Ford.
Thank you so much. Boy, thank you. What an incredible welcome. What? There you go. Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. What a night and what a result. Together, we have done the impossible. We have made history. Wow, I'm just so grateful, so grateful. Oh, boy. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing this unforgettable moment. And I love you, too. I'll tell you, I am so humbled by your support. I see some faces here tonight who've been with my family from day one. But what excites me the most, what just pumps me up, are all the new faces I see out there. So I am so grateful for all your support over the years. It's what keeps me going. And to the people of Ontario, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your trust. And thank you for once again putting your confidence in me. It's a responsibility that I will never take lightly. But most importantly, thank you for sharing in a vision for our great province. Sharing in a dream of a bright and prosperous future, an era of unprecedented growth and opportunity. So if you're a miner in the north who's out of work, I want you to know we're building that road to the Ring of Fire. If you've had to worry about your job at the local auto plant, I want you to know we're investing in the future of Ontario's auto sector. If you're a student who wants to work in the tech sector, we will have a job waiting for you. If you're a newcomer with a degree who can't get a job in your field, we'll make sure you can get credentials you need. This is what we're working for. This is what the Ontario dream is all about. And my promise to you, you have my word, that every single day I will get up and I will get to work. And I will do everything in my power to deliver on this dream. Because tonight's victory, it isn't about me, it isn't about the party. This victory belongs to every worker who knows that they deserve better. It belongs to every family who knows that they can dream bigger. But most of all, this victory belongs to each and every one of you. And to my rock, my wife Carla, my beautiful daughters, my entire family, thank you for always believing in me, and thank you for standing with me through thick and thin. I want to thank my entire campaign team and every candidate who ran for our party. But most importantly, I want to thank the thousands and thousands of volunteers who spent the last month hitting the doors. Together, we knocked on over 3 million doors during this campaign. That number is absolutely incredible. It's staggering. An army to win a victory like this, so please know that tonight is your night. I also need to take a moment to recognize Andrea, Mike, and Stephen. It takes a lot to put your name forward in a race like this. And while we had different ideas, I truly believe that we share a desire to see Ontario succeed. And for my part, they deserve of applause. Thank you. And for my part, I did my best to run a positive campaign, to put forward a clear and consistent message, to offer a plan that everyone could get behind. I promised to build this province, to say yes to more housing, yes to attainable housing, so families once again can strive for the dream of home ownership. To say yes to building the infrastructure that keeps communities going, to put our workers to work, building the subways, the hospitals, and the highways that our growing province desperately needs. To run a smarter, more efficient government so we can reduce the unfair burdens like the license plate stickers and the gas tax. My friends, this is a plan I put forward, and I've spent the last 5 weeks traveling to every corner of this province, meeting with the hardworking women and men who are building Ontario. And I can tell you, we are ready. Ontario's ready, ready to get it done. We're ready to roll up our sleeves, to rise to the occasion, because we have the potential for greatness. We are blessed with every advantage, a bright and hard-working workforce, an abundance of natural resources. We have the critical minerals that the entire world is after. We have the capital, the technology, and the ingenuity. But most importantly, we have a vision, a dream. I see it as I look out into the crowd. I see it in your faces. I see hope. I see optimism. And your energy, your passion, it's what keeps me going every day. My friends, because it all started almost 3 decades ago, right here in Etobicoke. It started with my dad, Doug Ford Sr., my mom, Diane, and my brother, Rob, whose birthday was just last week, and who I owe so much to. I know that they're up there in heaven and they are celebrating with us tonight. Friends, it started with all of us together. And over the years, we've had our ups and downs. We've tasted victory and we've faced defeat. But through it all, we never gave up. And when I think about how far we've come, how far we've traveled together. We started as an idea, a new approach to politics. Thanks over the years, thanks to each of you showing up at our events, volunteering at the doors, spreading our message. Thanks to you, what started as an idea turned into a movement. A political movement that changed the landscape of this province and this country forever. Together, we're reimagining our party, we're reimagining our province, and tonight we have changed what it means to be a progressive conservative in Ontario. It's no longer about being part of the blue, the red, the orange, or green team. It's about recognizing that there's so much that unites us. This is my proudest achievement as a leader of this party, building a new coalition, expanding our base, creating a more inclusive party where everyone matters, because never in our lifetime has it been more important for a party to represent all of Ontario. Now more than ever, we need unity. The road ahead, it won't be easy. We have big challenges in front of us, an uncertain global economic climate. We are competing against other jurisdictions for every job, for every dollar of investment, but Ontario is stronger. We're absolutely unstoppable when we stand together. And so tonight, I call for unity, and whether you work on the assembly line and voted NDP your entire life or cast your last ballot for the federal Liberals, I want you to know that as long as I'm here, there's room for you in this party. I will fight for you every single day. And friends, when I think about the workers, when I think about the unions who got behind us in this election, when I think about that we've built together, it's incredible, because there was a time not long ago when some of the same people who are with us now couldn't see a home for themselves in this party. It wasn't easy. We had to admit our mistakes. We had to build back confidence, and that journey, it's not over. I'm the first to admit that there's more work to be done, but tonight's result, it proves that we're on the right track, that this approach is the right one, and tonight's results proves that this is how we get things done, by being inclusive, by focusing on what unites us, and being ready to work with anyone. And with this approach together, we are unstoppable, because we're just getting started. But tonight we celebrate, because this is your night. Tonight, the people have spoken from Windsor to Cornwall, from Timmins, and thank God Timmins, to Ajax. Together, we're blazing a new trail. We're charting a new course. We're telling the world this is our time, this is our moment, because this is our province. I want to thank you, and God bless the people of Ontario. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
There's the victory speech from Doug Ford, 26th Premier of the province of Ontario, coming into tonight, and will keep the job for at least another 4 years if he wants it. Let's just show you how the total vote broke down tonight. We told you 4 years ago, Doug Ford got 40.5% of the total vote. Tonight, 41. He's got, basically, he came in with a coalition 4 years ago and added just a little bit to it. As you said, the Labour vote, a lot of it has come over to Doug Ford tonight, 41. The New Democrats came into tonight 4 years ago with 34% of the vote. They lost about 10 points tonight. 23.5 is their percentage of the total vote tonight. But again, a very efficient vote, good for 29 seats so far. And as Sherry DeNovo's pointed out, there are still a lot of potential NDP seats we haven't heard from, because the polls are still open in a bunch of ridings, 20-plus ridings around the province. where they've had some irregularities, and therefore they haven't closed the polls yet. Therefore, they can't release the returns from those ridings yet. The Liberals got almost 20% of the vote 4 years ago. They got 23.6 tonight. Not a particularly efficient vote. It only translates into, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, 9 seats. Practically the same, within a tenth of a point, the same vote as the NDP. The NDP gets 29 seats with that percentage of the vote. The Liberals get 9 seats with basically the same percentage of the vote. Greens at 6.1, up a bit from last time, and 5.7 is other. And we're going to look into what we can figure out about that, whether that's New Blue, Ontario, Libertarian, we'll see. We want to bring up some particularly close races. Every cabinet minister, incidentally, in the last government of Ontario has been re-elected, save and except for one. Can we bring that up right now? In the riding of Barrie, Springwater, Oro, Medante, the Liberals have a 2-vote lead. 28,600 votes between the two of them, and it's a 2-vote lead for the former mayor of Barrie, Jeff Lehman. I guess technically he's still the mayor. The mayor of Barrie, Jeff Lehman, who I must say was probably disappointed tonight because he's accustomed to winning elections with 90% of the votes. He's not going to get that tonight. But in a world where the Tories pick up 5 seats from last time, is it possible their Attorney General will go down to defeat tonight? Let's see. 84% of the polls reporting, so that one is a long way from over. Let's see some other tight races across the province tonight. Well, that's not one of them. I thought we were doing tight races here, guys. That's not a tight race at all. The Solicitor General won her riding easily. Let's get, okay, I'd love to hear from, sorry, say again? It's coming. Okay, great. Incidentally, we still have to hear speeches from Andrea Horwath and Stephen Del Duca, which will happen tonight. Even though Andrea Horwath is still technically the leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition, we'll have to have a discussion at some point as to whether or not, well, let's be honest.
She's still going to be the leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition.
Unless she steps down. Which, you know, okay.
Well,
we can talk,
Joel
Steve. We'll talk later.
Said it's time for a change in the leadership of the NDP.
I was going to say, someone from the caucus, you know, always says it before the leader does. So, I mean, she's had 4 kicks at it, so it's inevitable. This was her last election as leader. The question is, does she announce it or does somebody else announce it for her? Why don't we go to Hamilton and find out? There's NDP HQ as the leader, Andrea Horwath, enters the room. She can take, let me say this for Andrea Horwath. You call her the Steeltown Scrapper. She got COVID in the middle of this campaign. It took her off the hustings for a good few days. Her plane broke down after that, so she couldn't get up to Northern Ontario where she really wanted to go. And despite that, she came back and, Sherry, I'll tell you, she gave. She really gave.
Absolutely, and she's been giving for many years. I mean, she took the party from 10 people when I was first elected to 40. And it looks like we may not make the 40 tonight, but we'll get close, despite all predictions to the contrary, that, you know, the Liberals were going to move on up. They did not. So, I mean, that's an achievement. That's an achievement.
Let's hear from Andrea Horwath.
Bonjour, chers amis. Thank you, Janelle Brady, for that wonderful introduction and for all of your hard work as our party president. I want to begin by thanking every NDP candidate that stepped up and put their name on the ballot this election. You literally are the most impressive team of candidates that has ever been fielded ever in this province. I've never seen a team so smart, so accomplished, so diverse, and so dedicated, with so much energy and fight. I'm so proud of each and every one of you. And thank you to the thousands and thousands of folks that volunteered on our campaigns in every corner of Ontario. Thousands of people every single day fighting in our campaigns. Thank you so much for that hard work. Thank you so much for that hard work. In fact, and I've said this over the last couple of days as we've been going through the province, you literally are the beating heart of our party and our movement. Thank you. You're so wonderful. And And to our awesome campaign staff, hello. Hello. On the ground and at our headquarters, what an amazing team. Let's give it up for them. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And you know what? My special thanks to the folks who voted for our amazing candidates. So many people voted for our amazing candidates for good reason, because they're amazing candidates. And so thank you, thank all of you for making your ballot, marking your ballot for hope, marking your ballot for optimism, marking your ballot for what we can do together. And thank you so much to the millions of Ontarians who made their voices heard in this election. They actually made their voices heard. To every Ontarian, regardless of who you voted for, thank you for caring. Thank you for caring about our province and our future. I'd like to take a minute to thank Stephen Del Duca, Mike Schreiner, and Doug Ford for representing their parties well. Everyone who puts their name on a ballot is stepping up and making our democracy stronger. There's no doubt about it. But you're probably not surprised to know that I could not be more proud of the vision that we put before Ontario, We put a vision forward of a province where everyone can get the health care that they need, when they need it, close to home. A strong, universal healthcare system without painful waits and hallway medicine, where we respect and value our incredible healthcare heroes. Let's give it up for our healthcare heroes. And not only where we respect them, but where we have their back, like they always have our backs. That's how much we have to respect our frontline healthcare workers. Where we have affordable dental care for every Ontarian, mental health and pharmacare into OHIP, seniors care that puts support and respect for our loved ones ahead of corporate profits. The top-notch public education our kids deserve in good schools with enough caring adults. A plan to tackle the crises in housing and affordability, get wages up and rents down. A new way forward where we respect and fulfill the treaties. Working shoulder to shoulder with Indigenous people to fix what's broken, from clean water to livable housing. Urgently tackling the climate crisis, urgently tackling the climate crisis. Doing our part to ensure that the next 7 generations have a healthy planet and a bright future, full of opportunity. And doing so much more to build a province without hate, bigotry, or discrimination of any kind. We will never stop fighting to make these goals a reality for people in Ontario. In every corner of this province, people are counting on us to be on their side. And I know, without a doubt, the team of New Democrats elected tonight will work hard every single day for you. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's true. New Democrats will always stand up for everyday working families. Always. For every person who needs support from their government. For every Ontarian trying to build a better life for themselves and their family. Everyone trying to build a stronger foundation and a brighter future for the next generation. And so tonight the people have spoken, and they've sent a very clear message. The majority of Ontarians have not endorsed or supported the Conservative government. And I just want to say that Doug Ford needs to realize that. He needs to understand that Ontarians did not vote for more cuts and privatization of the things that matter the most to all of us. Ontarians did not vote for more painful waits and more hallway medicine, more horrific mistreatment of our loved ones in seniors' care, or for more of our kids' schools to crumble into disrepair. That's not what Ontarians voted for. They did not vote for more of their friends and neighbors to slip through the cracks, to struggle and scrape by, living paycheck to paycheck, or slip into poverty. They didn't vote for an even less affordable province, where the hope of buying a home or even renting a decent place you can afford becomes more and more of a pipe dream. The majority of Ontarians did not vote for big highways to big houses that no one can afford. They didn't vote for our most vulnerable to be trapped in legislated poverty. They did not vote for a government that ignores its treaty obligations or ignores the rising tide of hate, division, and violence targeting so many communities in our province. And they didn't vote for a government that ignores science, carves up the greenbelt, and makes the climate crisis worse instead of better. And you know what? These are the worries that people have shared with me throughout the years. And that's why I have fought so hard for them. Respecting the voters means listening to all that they tell us. And this is something I want to remind Mr. Ford about, that respecting the voters is about listening to all of what they tell us. So I'm going to save my final thanks for my family, my friends, and the people of Hamilton. And my commitment to you is never going to waver. And I'm going to keep working to earn your confidence each and every day. I'm going to keep doing that. But tonight, it's time for me to pass the torch, to pass the baton, to hand off the leadership of the NDP. And you know what? It makes me sad, but it makes me happy because our team is so strong right now. You know, I brought a tissue, and my grandma would have normally tucked it under her sleeve, but my sleeve's too loose, and so I had to tuck it into my belt. But I'm not shedding tears of sadness. I'm shedding tears of pride. Look at you. Look at all of you. Look at what we have done together. Look at what we have done together. Honestly, together, my friends, we have built a party that is stronger and more ready to govern than ever before. And you know what? You know what? We didn't get there this time. We didn't get there this time. But just know just know that we will continue to be the powerful champions people need us to be in order to fight Doug Ford's cuts. And you know what? We are once again going to be your official opposition. And I can guarantee you, Ontarians, that as your official opposition, we will work hard every single day to fix what matters most to the people of our province of Ontario. You know why? Do you know why we're going to do that work? Because your priorities were our priorities before the election, and they were our priorities during the election, and they will be our priorities after the election, because that's who we are as New Democrats. And so I want to end by guaranteeing every Ontarian that we will always, always be working for you. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup. Miigwech Nyaweh.
Well, I must say, that is a side of Andrea Horwath I'm not sure any of us have ever seen before. Certainly the enthusiasm we have seen before, the high-spiritedness we have seen before. Shedding a tear in public, Sherry DeNovo, I'm not sure I've ever seen that before. They don't call her the Steel Town Scrapper for nothing.
No, I mean, it's a very moving speech. And again, I think she did the right thing. She preempted the decision. I think that was the writing on the wall. And that was brave. And that was courageous, and that was the right thing to do. So, as I said, she's led the party from 10 to well, we may lose some seats tonight, but we certainly didn't match what the polls predicted in terms of losing seats, and set the stage for the next leader to really win the government of Ontario, which I think with another 4 years of Doug Ford is exactly what will happen.
Well, to that end, Control Room, why don't we do that first, okay? Here's what happened in the province of Ontario tonight. Doug Ford, his PC party with 41% of the total votes cast. The Liberals actually come second in the total vote, but because their vote is inefficient, only results in a third place 8 seats. The NDP at 23% of the total vote, but because it's very efficient, good for 29 seats and official opposition status. And the Greens up a little bit from last time. They're at 6% right now. Quarter of a million people going to vote Green tonight. Stephen Del Duca is going to be the next leader to speak. We'll hold off on, well, here he comes right now. Okay. He's going to come in right now, and I'm not sure we're going to get the same definitive answer as to his political future that we just got from Andrea Horwath. Mr. Del Duca was very confident about saying earlier today that regardless of the results tonight, he was going to stay and fight. Let's hear if he has some more details to add right now. Leader of the Liberals, Stephen Del Duca.
Incredible welcome into this room. It is really wonderful for me to see all of you, so many in this room that I know have worked so hard through so many weeks, so many months, in some cases, friends and supporters who have worked side by side with me, with my family for many, many years. I want to thank Ontarians. You think about this for a moment, we are so very fortunate in Canada to have such a thriving and healthy democracy, where every single vote counts. And whether this was your first election or your 40th, thank you for doing your civic duty. I also want to thank all of the candidates in every riding. You know, I've said this many times before, putting one's name on a ballot is not an easy decision. And going door to door, attending debates and events and working to explain your views, explain your vision to the people of Ontario is also very, very hard. and every single bit of it takes courage. I want to thank all of the candidates who stood for office in this election. To Andrea Horwath, to Mike Schreiner, and to Doug Ford, I want to say thank you for stepping up and leading your parties. Thank you for making the sacrifices that come with traveling the province, well, for weeks at a time, months at a time, and for enduring the scrutiny that comes with leadership. It's not always easy, and we often don't agree, but I respect each of you for stepping up as leaders. And I want to say thank you and congratulations to our Ontario Liberal team, to the women and men all over this province who chose to stand up and who chose to fight so hard. I am incredibly, incredibly proud of each and every one of you. Yes, all of our candidates, every single candidate. Our Ontario Liberal Party, our Ontario Liberal family has come so very far so fast, and during a pandemic no less. You think about this for just a moment. We had a diverse and inclusive roster of candidates with, for the first time ever in our party's history, 50% of our candidates being female. Absolutely, absolutely. And so many of our candidates, so many of them determined, because as being younger candidates, so determined to help shape Ontario's future. Now, to be clear, this isn't the outcome that we had hoped for and worked hard for. And yes, it's true, I am disappointed to not have been successful here in my home community, my home riding of Vaughan Woodbridge. But I am very, very proud of all of our MPPs, both those caucus members who will be returning to the legislature and our newly elected MPPs. I'm proud of the innovative ideas that we as a team brought forward. Proud of every one of you who fundraised, knocked on doors, made those phone calls, put up signs, and today got out the vote. I want to thank our riding association presidents. I know many of you have heard me say this before. Many years ago, before I first became an MPP, I had the chance to serve as a riding association president. I had the chance to serve as a campus club president and to serve on multiple riding executives. And so, to the women and men who make up the rank and file, if I can put it that way, of our party, yes, our PLA presidents, including my own, Christina Cindric. Thank you so much, Christina. To our riding association presidents and executives, to our Ontario Young Liberals, to our Ontario Women's Liberal Commission, and to Brian Johns, our party president, and the entire Ontario Liberal Party Executive Council, thank you. Thank you. And I just want to say again, I have no doubt that the women and men that Ontario Liberals have elected to the legislature will do their part. In fact, will do more than their part to help grow a new and energetic progressive movement here in Ontario. It will, however, be a movement that will be led by a new leader. Earlier this evening, I informed our party president of my decision to step down from the leadership of our party, and I have asked him to meet with the executive to set a leadership contest for as soon as is reasonable. I am again so very proud of the work that we did. And here is something else that I know. Watching how we've grown stronger, watching how we've worked so hard to build this party over the last couple of years, I know that we as a political family and we as a political movement will be starting the next campaign from a much better place. In addition to the new MPPs that we've added, we've attracted, think about this, we've attracted tens of thousands of new volunteers and party members to take up the fight And we anticipate that the party will be debt-free by the end of this year. By the end of this year. But more importantly, I know that Ontario Liberals will use our new, stronger platform to continue to propose thoughtful, innovative, progressive ideas to make our province a place to grow. Today, the voters of our province have spoken, and they've delivered a majority government to the Conservatives. I want to congratulate Premier Ford, and I hope he leads our province well. Now, I say that, and I mean that sincerely, because above all else, I'm a dad. I'm a dad to Talia and Grace, who are sitting right here. And I want my daughters to grow up in a province, an incredible opportunity, an incredible Ontario, that offers them even more opportunity than I had growing up here. I trust that the incredible responsibility of leading this great province will weigh heavily on Mr. Ford. I know that it would for me, because after all, it is a big deal. It's a big deal to be entrusted with the hopes and dreams of millions of people. And as a party, I know that we will redouble our efforts to earn your trust, because we don't care where you came from, how long you've been here, who you're connected to, or how much money you have, or what your station in life is. We care that you feel respected. We care that you feel included. We care that you feel seen. And we'll look right past the neighborhood that you live in, rich or poor, rural or urban, north or south, to make sure that you get your chance to succeed. That's what Ontario Liberals believe in. That's the Ontario that we will always fight for. And you know that we will do this, because what's important to us is pretty simple. We want the best for you, the best education, the best health care, the best quality of life, all supported by the best jobs and the strongest economy, and we won't ever stop working to make that happen. Now, the last thing that I want to say as I wrap up is that there are a lot of people, and I can see so many of you as I stand here at this podium, and I know that you in this room represent thousands of others right across Ontario. Now, the women and men who never stand at a podium and never see their names in the paper, but I and every single one of our candidates, well, we stand on your shoulders. But there are three names that are most important to me of all: Utilia, Talia, and Grace, my wife and our daughters. You should see the look on their faces right now. My wife and our two daughters, who I love so, so much, who've inspired me, who've motivated me and supported me every single step of the way. And I can confirm that we've already agreed that we'll be at Wonderland this Sunday, right, guys? Now, they're the reason. They're the reason that I do this. They're the reason that I do everything. They're the reason that I've always been able to do what I've tried hard to do. Now, there's some other people that I want to thank as well. They're not in the room right now, but they are upstairs. And those are my parents, Margaret and Benny. Yes, please. My mom and dad, I've said this so many times, they literally moved heaven and earth for me and for my sister Lorraine and for my brothers Mark and Michael. They did everything for us, sacrificed, so dedicated, so hardworking. They still are. I want to say, Mom, Dad, I love you so much, and I am so grateful for everything that you've always done for me. Thank you. And I also want to thank a number of the people who've worked so hard. I'm looking out at an audience of people who I know have been knocking on doors here in Vaughan, Woodbridge, led by Andrew Donaghy, our local campaign manager. Andrew, thank you so much. And honestly, if I start naming all of the names of people who've worked hard over the past 4 weeks, and in some cases like Rocco Grossi over the past 30 years with me, that's Rocco Grossi, by the way, Rocco Grossi. I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all for being with me every step of the way. You know, this has been an incredible journey for me in this party, in this political family that I love so much. And as I said earlier in my remarks this evening, I know that we will go forward. I know that we will never stop working. I know that we will continue to grow and to be a force for good, a force for positive change here in Ontario. It is what Ontario Liberals do. It is what we do well. It is what we should continue to do, and again, I know we will. And I just want to say, having had the chance over the past couple of years to serve as your leader has been the honor of my lifetime. I want to thank you. I want to thank all Ontario Liberal Party members for giving me this chance, for working alongside me, and for making sure that we always put our best foot forward. So, thank you for this. Thank you for your incredible work. Thank you for always being there for me and for each other. And I look forward to doing whatever I can to continue to support our party and build an Ontario that is always a place to grow. Thank you so very much. Really appreciate it.
Well, as great a night as this is for Doug Ford and the Progressive Conservatives, it is just simply an awful night for Stephen Del Duca and the Ontario Liberals. There's no other way to put it. Stephen Del Duca hoped to create a red wave that would start with his own personal re-election back to the seat he once held in Vaughan Woodbridge. And hopefully, he thought, bring the Liberals back to official opposition status. None of that is happening tonight. The Liberals came into tonight with 7 seats. They will leave tonight, it looks like, with 8 seats. The NDP remains the official opposition. The Conservatives got elected to 76 seats 4 years ago. They're at 83 seats right now. And there are still a number of seats we haven't heard from tonight because of irregularities at polling stations. So some ridings, a few ridings, we have had no returns from at all. So we're going to have to factor all of that into the mix as well. And Hannah, I won't forget the one Green. Mike Schreiner did win his seat, but the hoped for by the Green Party pickup in Parry Sound Muskoka did not happen. The Conservatives took that. All right, let's go through a bunch of stuff, and then we're going to get some comments here at the table. Let's do the total vote first. In the province of Ontario tonight, how did that seat count happen? It happened because essentially Mike Harris, because Doug Ford, I'm in a time warp here, Doug Ford took a coalition that he put together in 2018 and essentially held it together and even added to it a bit. 40.5% of the total vote 4 years ago, 41% tonight. The Liberals technically are in second place on the total vote. They got 3,000 more votes than the NDP did tonight. But of course, with a very inefficient vote, they're third in the seat count. The NDP, actually I should say the Liberal vote is up about 4 or 5 points from last time. The NDP drops 10 points tonight in the total vote. They dropped 10, not sure they'll crack 1 million votes tonight, but we'll see. But a very efficient vote still puts them as the official opposition. And the Greens are north of 250,000 people who voted for them tonight. They're at 6%. That's a little better than they did last time. I'm not sure I can ever recall covering an election where 2 party leaders resigned on the same night. I don't think that's ever happened, certainly not in my lifetime. And let's show, Andrea Horwath announced first that she is going to step down, and you just heard Stephen Del Duca say he is going to step down. Control room. Let's have those who are waiting in the wings in the NDP caucus who potentially could be the next leader. Now, we thought coming into tonight, Deputy Leader Sarah Singh might be one of those people. Sherry, she lost her seat. Does that mean she's off the dance card?
I think so. I think so. But she certainly leaves a caucus with some incredibly strong contenders for that leadership role.
Well,
so
let's keep looking.
There's hope.
Let's keep looking. Others in the wings of the NDP, Marit Stiles. You'd have to put her at the top of the list with a massive victory tonight in Davenport. She was the education critic. She's a very impressive performer in the legislature. She'd be at the top, certainly among the 1A, 1B, 1C list of potential replacements for Andrea Horwath. Let's keep going. Who else is waiting in the wings? Well, let's Jennifer French. I think we just want to put that up there because she's now got the check mark beside her name. And look how close that victory is for her tonight in the riding of Oshawa. Is she leadership potential?
I wouldn't put her in the. I mean, Jen's wonderful MPP. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't put her up there only because I mean I think there are others. Looking at the diversity requirement, I think that all parties should have right now. I'm thinking Kristen. I'm thinking Butilla. I'm thinking those who represent unrepresented portions of our population in Ontario that I think would be up there in terms of a leadership race. And Joel Harden, who is a wonderful, candidate who won again in a very Liberal strong seat and against all odds, I might add, and has been a very strong performer as well. And also independent voice. He's not always toed the line. I like that in a candidate.
Let's put up some of the other names tonight, and then we'll get some chat at the table about it. Waterloo, Catherine Fife, big victory for her, re-elected in the riding of Waterloo. She'd certainly be on the list. Who else you got there? That's the last one, Sheldon? Okay, John Michael, get in here. What do you think?
Well, about Jennifer French, I would say that one of Horwath's projects in her time as leader was to build the NDP in parts of the 905 where the party hadn't necessarily been competitive. French is part of the result of Horwath's work, and so she might have a path in the leadership there. I'm not sure, but some of the other names we've talked about, Butilla Carpoche in Parkdale High Park, I think absolutely. As Sherry said, the NDP, more than I think other parties, needs to be able to reach out to underrepresented demographics in Ontario, and they've got people in the caucus tonight who they can do that with.
Well, here's another one. Here's a new one. Let's put up Toronto Centre, please. People who live in downtown Toronto are certainly familiar with somebody they call KWT, Kristen Wong-Tam, who the check mark is beside her name. She's going to be the next representative for Toronto Centre at the Legislative Assembly. Strong member of the LGBTQ community. She is well known, certainly in the city of Toronto. Sherry, would you say she's leadership material?
Absolutely, I would say she's leadership material. Just why I donated to her campaign.
There you go. All right. One thing we perhaps, Dwight, did not anticipate talking about tonight was a Liberal leadership race, which we're now going to have. Stephen Del Duca has said that. So let's see some of the people. Well, this is not going to take much time. Can we have all 8, please? Let's have all 8. All right. Mary Margaret McMahon, Beaches, East York. She's a pickup from the Liberals at the expense of the NDP. Who else is in the Liberal caucus tonight? Let's keep it flipping. Don Valley East, Adil Shamji. That's a hold for the Liberals. That was Michael Coteau's old seat. He became a federal MP. Stephanie Bowman is a new candidate in Don Valley West. She defeated the former Toronto Police Chief Mark Saunders. That's Kathleen Wynn's riding and a much bigger margin of victory. Ted Hsu in Kingston of the Islands. That is a pickup at the NDP's expense for the Liberals. What else going on with the Liberals tonight? Orléans, Stephen Blair. He won a by-election in 2020. Another strong hold for the Liberals tonight in the riding of Orleans or Orléans, depending. John Fraser was the interim leader for the Liberals. Not sure he'll run for the permanent leadership, but he holds Ottawa South. That's the McGuinty's old stomping grounds. Very strong for him. Ottawa Vanier, Lucille Collard, again comes in a by-election in 2020, holds the seat for the Liberals. A very safe Liberal seat tonight. All the ones the Liberals won are safe. And Mitzi Hunter, who 4 years ago had the closest margin of victory in the whole province, 74 votes. Does a little better tonight, wins by almost 3,500 votes tonight. She ran for the leadership against Del Duca last time. Can we have some of your ideas as to who we're going to see in the contest next time?
Sure, and first of all, allow me to thank Stephen Del Duca on behalf of Liberals across province. Stephen, he did a lot. He almost eliminated the party's debt. He recruited a great team of candidates. I've known him since he was a teenager. As my former colleagues will tell you, there's nothing glamorous about being in the third party and long drives on lonely highways to meet 5 or 6 people. So we, all Liberals, owe Stephen a debt of gratitude. I think Liberals have 2 tasks right now. The first is who should be the next leader. But I think more importantly, Liberals need to decide who they want to be and where they belong on the spectrum. There are a number of us in the party that feel the party has gone too far to the left. And Doug Ford occupied the middle ground tonight. And I think Sherry will appreciate this. I remember, and I grew up in a labor town, and I had to fight tooth and nail with the New Democrats. But I always used to say that given a choice between a New Democrat, a real New Democrat, and a left-wing Liberal, they're going to go with the real New Democrat every time. So Liberals have got a lot of thinking to do, and federally and provincially, I might add. And I think we need to sit down and start talking openly. I mean, this is 2 elections in a row where, you know, I don't know if we're official party status. I think we're right on the border. Is it 9 now?
Yeah, I think it was 9.
That's, you know, and the other thing Liberals have to be concerned about, Sherry spoke about this earlier, I mean, the polarization, right? Left and right. And so we all have a lot to think about. I want to thank Stephen Del Duca. And by the way, a lot of key Liberals who served our government who essentially volunteered to be part of this. And, you know, he ran a great campaign with no money, no staff, and he always, I felt, punched above his weight. Well, we convinced the world we might be the official opposition. It wasn't meant to be. So,
can I just get you on that, Aaron? Because, I mean, Paulie was bang on the PC number tonight. I mean, it was right in there. Paulie seemed a little confused on who would be the official opposition tonight. What do you think happened?
Yeah, and I agree with Dwight that Stephen Del Duca, I thought, did a great job, and we saw that in the data, that people were attracted to his message. Early on, he got a bump. What we're seeing in the analysis is that the Liberals didn't come out for the vote, that it was, I think you're going to see it was a low voter turnout. And when you're not passionate, there's no issues. I mean, as much as he might have had a good campaign, he wasn't known, and you're not that wedded to a leader that you just got to know in the last 30 days. And so I think that's what we're going to see in the analysis, that there was some excitement there and he ran a good campaign. But at the end of the day, it was getting out that vote. And if I think Doug Ford is going to run with it, which he did, then what is the motivation for me to come out just so I can perhaps take some seats from the new Democrats, just so I can be in the opposition?
Janet.
I'm just going to say, but I think Dwight put his finger on something that the Liberal Party is going to have to struggle with is you know, the antipathy amongst some of the Trudeau Liberals, you know, and I mean, because the Liberal brand in Ontario used to be, you know, like you could count on about 30% of the vote, you know, sort of in the good old days. It was always there. So I think, yeah, that's a major rebuilding. And I think, yeah, Doug Ford has rebuilt the party provincially, and he has done it in wins in this province. He's trying to be in the middle.
We got a bunch of close races that we want to bring people up to scratch on here as we look at a Legislative Assembly with 83 Tories, 31 New Democrats, 8 Liberals, 1 Green, and still a few seats to hear from. Eglinton Lawrence, this is really close, eh? 300 votes separating the Tory Robin Martin and her Liberal challenger. 90% of the polls reporting, so this one is still too close to call. Let's see some other close races out there. In Hamilton, Niagara, Jeff Birch. Well, the check mark is beside his name now, but only a 700-vote margin over his Conservative opponent, Fred Davies. That one was pretty close. In Oshawa, we called this one as well. Jennifer French will return to Queen's Park for her 3rd term. In Haldimand, Norfolk, this one, look at this. This is, I mean, it is incredibly rare for an independent to win a seat at Queen's Park. I mean, it's happened before, but it's incredibly rare. The Tories get defeated in Haldimand, Norfolk by... This is great revenge for Toby Barrett, isn't it? I mean, here's the story here is that Toby Barrett was the member there for almost 30 years. And before he could enjoy the respect of being able to announce his own retirement, the Premier's office said, here's our candidate, and it's not your candidate, it's our candidate. And he didn't like that. And as a result, he said, well, I like my candidate better, my former executive assistant. And he went out and knocked on doors for her, and she's going to be the MPP. She got elected. So take that, I guess, for the Premier's office. Now, do we got any other? Sorry, say again? Oh, yeah, let's do that one now. Okay, it's not unprecedented, obviously, for the Liberals to come 3rd. They came 3rd last time. But it's pretty unusual. 5 times in 43 elections have the Liberals come 3rd. 1943, keep going, 1948, 1975, 2018, and now this time. And the asterisks beside 1948, 1975, and 2022 mean they actually came 2nd in the total vote in that election, but came 3rd in the seat count. Janet, you and I both remember 1975.
Yes, we do.
That was Bob Nixon. who came within 2 points of beating Bill Davis, came 4 or 5 points ahead of the NDP, and still came third in the seat count. Something about the Liberal vote that's not particularly efficient right now. So for the 5th time in the history of the province of Ontario, the Liberals get the second, the Liberals come third, which is, you've put your finger on it, they got a problem now.
Well, but let me add something.
Okay.
You know, and Steve and I remember when David Peterson got 95 seats, and 3 years later, he was humbled. Yeah. The Tories have been in third place. When Mike Harris took over the party, I think he got 20 seats. The NDP have perennially been there, but Bob Rae was able to put them into government. Andrea Horwath, and by the way, I want to compliment her. She's been an outstanding leader of the opposition through her entire tenure. I was on the receiving end of her criticism for a number of years, but she was always gracious, and I remember she called me the day I announced that I was stepping aside, and I think that speaks well of her, and she'll be an important person in the legislature as long as she decides to stay there in the progressive movement in this province and country in the years ahead. So I think we owe her a debt of gratitude.
We got a prediction over here. What do you think she's going to do next?
I don't know, but I see Mayor of Hamilton in the in the future or something like that. Yeah. But I do want to say something else.
That's right.
I mean, I think a big lesson that none of us have spoken about is the way we elect people. I think proportional representation. I mean, here we have the vast majority of people, really we do, 54% who did not vote for Doug Ford, whose voices are not going to be heard the way they should, and we're one of the few countries in the world, really, in the developed world, that still goes first past the post.
I'll make you feel worse. It's 59%.
There
59% of the people didn't want Doug Ford as premier, and yet he's got all the power.
So there you go. And I think proportional representation leads to better government because it leads to negotiation. We all know that if you negotiate, you tend to get better policy as a result. So just want to put that out there. It's something that parties have promised, but of course, if you win, you don't bring it in.
To a referendum.
Yeah, voters of Ontario
we put it to a referendum, and they didn't want it.
They don't want it. And the other thing about is that when you have the first past the post system, you get a government that is accountable. So I mean, Doug Ford has what his plan, what he wants to do, he is accountable for delivering on that. You end up in a pizza parliament kind of thing like we've seen in other countries, and who do you yell at if you come to the next election and what you voted for didn't happen?
Okay,
there's no accountability.
I'm jumping in here because we got to do a couple of things still. We're done in 5 minutes. Can I please see the northern ridings that just came in because they were not reporting earlier because of irregularities? There's Sol Mamakwa, Indigenous member of the Ontario legislature, the only member of Queen's Park who, when he stands up to ask a question, the place goes silent.
Yeah.
A lot of respect for this man.
First elected Indigenous.
Right. In one of the new ridings that was just brought in the last parliament for the first time, Kiwetanung. We got one more? Anything from Algoma, Manitoulin? Thank you. Okay. No surprise here. Michael Mantha, who's represented that riding for several elections in a row now, he's coming back as the MPP for Algoma, Manitoulin. Now, let's do this thing which we've done for the last many elections in a row, which is we're going to show you how the province changed tonight. Can we bring the maps up now, guys? Let's bring the maps up. We're going to go region by region through the province. We're going to show you what it looked like 4 years ago, and then we're going to show you what it looks like tonight. And that really does tell the tale of how different a province, or not, we are facing tonight. So let's go through it. Let's start on the 416. That's what it looked like at dissolution. That gray patch in the middle was, what's his name now? I'm forgetting.
Roman Baber?
Koto. Michael Koto's riding, and Baber is the other gray patch in York North. But lots of New Democrats, lots of Tories, a couple of Liberals. What's it look like tonight? Let's dissolve and see what we're looking like tonight. We'll wait. It's okay. We don't mind waiting. We're okay. Come on, Sheldon. It died? It died. Oh, boy. Like Dwight's voice tonight. Can we do any of the other ones, or is this not going to happen? Well, okay. I will tell you. Do you know what turnout was tonight? Turnout was 57% 4 years ago. What was turnout tonight?
Oh, not great.
43%.
Yeah.
43.6%. Now, if you think about the fact that Doug Ford got 41% of the 43% that voted, you're looking at a government with 100% of the power that got elected with basically the votes of 22% of Ontarians.
That's why we need proportional representation.
That's why we need everybody to vote.
People would come out and vote if they knew they had a voice and there was something worth voting for.
I don't think that's what happened.
The only reason we haven't done it is because the same parties that always get power, it favors them. So we have a duopoly of just two parties going back and forth.
See, there are different models of proportional representation. I would be open to looking at that again. I voted to put it to a referendum of the people.
How much time we got? 2 minutes? Okay, we got to go. I got to thank people. I want to thank us for starting. Just great of you to spend so much time with us this evening, everybody. You flew all the way in from Ottawa, and you came in from Windsor. You came all the way in from Ajax, which probably took as long as it does come in from Windsor.
Especially when you look at this flat tire.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here. We want to thank Hillary Clark and Harrison Lohman, who've been on this thing with me all night long. Nam Kiwanuka, John Michael McGrath over there, Maria Saru, producer. The results producers, Sandra Jonas, Meredith Martin, Eric Bombacino, Colin Ellis, Leanne Kotler, Vicky Chow, Brittany Weaver, Maya Abramson, Sheldon Osmond, the great Osmondo, our director, Mark Ford, the technical crew, puts it all together here. Darcy Pickering at Bannister Lake, they're the guys who make up these fancy graphics. Beautiful election software producer. I know, Tina, 1 minute, I know. Hal Moravnik, the election graphics wizard. And most of all, we want to thank you for watching. And we want to give you some good news, which is that McGrath and I are going to be doing the podcast tomorrow, so we hope you'll listen to the On Poly podcast tomorrow for our final edition of the On Poly podcast as a daily basis, and then we come back for 2 more Mondays to the end of the month, and then you're done with us. Then you don't have to listen to us anymore until the fall. I really want to thank everybody for watching. Doug Ford is the Premier of Ontario for yet another term. He joins an august group of people: Mike Harris, John Robarts, Les Frost, George Drew, Howard Ferguson, James Whitney, who won 2 back-to-back majority governments. Bill Davis never did it. Doug Ford's in that company now. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
The following presentation is available in described video.
I found out I was going to do this. I called my brothers in Toronto, and they were like, oh, cool. I want you to know that every member of my family does an Elwie Yost impression.
Do you do one?
I do. I'm not going to do it for you.
You won't?
Well,
I'll turn my head.
What is it? Elwie Yost. You won't? the nicest Canadian accent in the world. Elwie Yost. Oh, geez.
Roll animation. No. 5, 4, 3 to animation. 2, 1. And
then this is where like Jimmy Stewart comes up, you know, and then like the bass now it's kind of coming in. Then it kind of fades out, and then there you are.